Gasping for air, sweat dripping from his brow, he struggled to speak, finally managing a strained "Gee guys," against a blurred backdrop of icy blue. A chilling realization dawned upon the character, a sense of dread washing over them as they faced the monstrous creature. Three warriors braced themselves against the looming, grotesque figure, its petals unfurling like a nightmare. Amidst a chaotic, icy landscape, three figures charged forward, the green-haired one brandishing a mystical book while his companion wielded what looked like drumsticks. The third, equipped with a futuristic visor and a gleaming sword, found himself overwhelmed by the intensity of the assault, his desperate cry echoing the sentiment. Anxious, someone desperately questioned the delayed arrival of allied reinforcements, while another, equally worried, admitted to hearing they were due but couldn't confirm their location. A man, clutching an ornate, glowing book, grimly observed the escalating chaos. A chilling premonition of impending doom heavy in his words. Tension crackled in the air as a sharp command, "Everyone, step back," cut through the scene, faces etched with a mixture of fear and awe. A monstrous, biomechanical creature unfurled, its screech echoing amidst a shower of sharp, red projectiles. Below, a trio of figures, clad in military-esque attire, stared upwards in terror and awe. The redhead with a camera-like device on his forehead recognized the horrifying spectacle, his voice a choked whisper of disbelief. With a manic grin, the man with the strange device strapped to his forehead excitedly asked his unseen audience if they could witness the spectacle unfolding before him. A figure, suspended midair, was pierced by a barrage of unseen projectiles, a crimson aura swirling around him as someone declared his formidable title. Below, a dark-haired man with a sharp gaze and a touch of blood on his cheek clutched his throat, a grim satisfaction playing on his lips as he announced the arrival of Hunter G. Shinbeek. A hand held up a phone, displaying a live feed of a dark-suited man with an intense gaze, the viewer marveling at their first virtual glimpse of him. With a touch of awe and perhaps a hint of apprehension, the observer murmured about the man's fearsome reputation, the hunter of hunters. A dark-haired man, his gaze sharp and shadowed, questioned the meaning of it all, a sense of weariness clinging to his words. On the school grounds, amidst the celebratory chatter of graduation, a young man stood apart, his gaze downcast at his phone, a poignant mix of disappointment and resignation clouding his features, as he realized his father hadn't shown up for his big day. A blue-haired young man, Seung-yeon, was approached by a surprised acquaintance holding a bouquet. The man in the suit questioned the blue-haired youth about his parents' whereabouts. He mumbled that they were busy. A skeptical "really?" hung in the air, hinting at disbelief. The blue-haired student, looking slightly aloof, was asked to take a picture. A photo captured three figures, two young men in suits, one giving a thumbs up while holding a bouquet, and a young woman beside them, all posing against a backdrop of a modern building, with a cool, almost indifferent expression. The blue-haired man in the suit held his phone up, a silent confirmation etched on his face. A blue-haired young man in a school uniform stood with his head bowed, seemingly troubled by the news that his father was unavailable. Suddenly, a voice called out, asking Seung-yeon if he had just arrived home, his face filling the frame with a look of quiet curiosity. The blue-haired woman seemed lost in thought, her expression a mix of weariness and quiet determination. She gently massaged the leg of another woman with long, dark hair, lying unconscious on a bed, bathed in the soft light of a nearby window. After 12 long years, a woman with long, dark hair lay serenely, seemingly lost in a peaceful slumber. A young man with the same shade of blue hair as hers gazed downwards, a mix of complex emotions swirling in his eyes as he softly whispered, "Mom." The blue-haired woman leaned forward, her voice heavy with unspoken tension as she questioned the other's absence from a momentous occasion. A strained apology followed, thick with a shared, unspoken understanding of the reason behind the missed celebration. His face twisted with a fierce protectiveness as he declared that he had to keep watch over his friend's older sister. He roared in frustration, emphasizing that it had only been for a single day. The blue-haired man angrily questioned someone about their apparent exclusive concern for Nuna. His sharp retort of "you're loud" cut through the tension. A bloodied and bruised man, his white shirt stained crimson, stood firm, his gaze unwavering as two figures with matching blue hair watched him intently. One of the blue-haired individuals, younger and visibly shaken, stared with wide, disbelieving eyes, sweat beading on his temple. He choked out a single, trembling word, "D-Dad?" A man with dark hair questioned someone's swift return, his expression a mix of suspicion and annoyance. The blue-haired man, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple, was reminded sternly about raising his voice at his mother. He paused, speechless, clearly caught off guard. With a barely suppressed sh, the blue-haired man in the suit bristled with irritation as the dark-haired agent walked past. With a sharp, almost frantic edge to his voice. The blue-haired man barked that he was headed to the training hall, his body already half-turned as if ready to bolt. His sharp gaze held a mixture of disbelief and frustration as he questioned their persistent ignorance. Exasperated, he reminded them again of what he had repeatedly explained. The man with blood-splattered suspenders scoffed, his words a sharp dismissal of the blue-haired figure's aspiration to become a hunter. Gritting his teeth, a man's shadowed profile spoke with a venomous urgency, demanding someone abandon their hunter's life. A brutal impact echoed in front of a building as a dark-haired man, his face shadowed, was struck with a fiery force by a figure whose face remained hidden from view. Ju-young, the active hunter and training hall owner, strained with effort, a low groan escaping his lips as he wielded wooden staffs. Noticing the intensity radiating from the determined face of his trainee, Ji Seung-yeon, he commented on his focused energy. The blue-haired Seung-yeon, his expression fierce and unwavering, met Ju-young's gaze from behind the flurry of his own staff movements, the wood practically vibrating with his power. A heavy boot struck the ground, kicking up dust. Blades clashed in a blinding flash of sparks as the two figures fought fiercely. The blue-haired man gritted his teeth, his gaze intense as the fight raged on. Swords clashed, sparks flying as the two men dueled in the stark, metallic room, one of them questioning his opponent's next move. Suddenly, a spectral blue chain materialized, wrapping itself around a hand with astonishing speed and power. The dark-haired man, his face etched with determination, watched the unfolding events with a grim fascination. A masked figure lunged forward, a spectral chain extending from his arm like a striking viper. The dark-haired man reacted swiftly, summoning a shimmering energy to deflect the attack, his expression focused with a triumphant smirk. The attacker declared his victory as the ethereal chain wrapped around his opponent's arm. Sinister grin spread across his face as a glowing chain materialized, seemingly extending from his very being. With a determined stance, a young man in dark attire commanded spectral chains, swirling them around him in a dazzling display of power. A young man with dark hair, seemingly startled, reached out as glowing, spectral chains materialized around his hand. Then, with a swift, brutal motion and a flurry of those same glowing symbols, he struck down another, sending him sprawling. A dark-clad figure, a wooden cross-shaped weapon casually held over his shoulder, smirked, implying a near-successful plan thwarted. He taunted the defeated, slumped figure on the ground, attributing his failure to weak chains. He gritted his teeth, the suggestion to refrain from using his powers clearly infuriating him. At the Medjai diner, one tried to appease another with an offering of black bean noodles. The blue-haired student, however, felt uncomfortable enjoying the meal, quietly reflecting on the generosity of his seemingly less fortunate companion. The dark-haired young man, wearing a simple black turtleneck and a silver chain, suggested another sparring session after their meal. His blue-haired companion, dressed in a loose white shirt, turned to him with a mixture of amusement and concern, pointing out the potential digestive consequences of more physical exertion. He reminded the eager fighter that their Hunter Academy entrance exam was already behind them, questioning the need for such intense training. Someone suggested the dark-haired, sharp-featured young man in the crisp white shirt and tie take a break while waiting for the results, but he vehemently refused. Alarmed, someone revealed the daunting truth. The other competitors were incredibly powerful, possessing multiple abilities or having the unfair advantage of being returnees. A fist clenched tightly around a pair of chopsticks, trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. He described, with a hint of disbelief, how these formidable opponents wielded fire and shattered walls with seemingly effortless ease. Frustration etched deep into his features. The blue-haired young man lamented his meager skills, convinced he could never become a hunter. The dark-haired man, a scar etching his cheek, simmered with a silent, desperate yearning for his father's recognition. Restlessness gnawed at the blue-haired youth, slumped over the table while his dark-haired companion looked on, concerned. The dark-haired young man with the pendant seemed stoic, almost indifferent. The blue-haired man, dressed in a crisp white shirt and tie, countered with a tense, almost desperate plea to Seung-yeon, insisting that the situation made it even more imperative to refuse. A young man, sporting a simple black tee and a troubled expression, reflected on the ideal of home as a sanctuary of peace. His gaze darkened as the thought shifted to a home devoid of comfort. A grim realization washed over him. Without that safe haven, there would be nowhere to turn in times of struggle. Under a bleak, rain-lashed sky, a grim-faced man with a microphone declared it had been a century since the monsters appeared. For decades, monsters have infiltrated the human world, masking their true nature beneath the deceptive veneer of humanity. A young man with messy, dark hair and a stern expression stood in the pouring rain, his uniform slightly disheveled, bearing the weight of a grim secret. On a rain-slick street, a lone figure stood apart, seemingly lost in thought. While hushed, whispers followed him, rumors of another world, a fantastical journey, and a deceptive homecoming. An accusation hung in the air, suggesting the newcomer's claims of returning from a different realm were a carefully crafted lie, meant to obscure a darker truth. A hooded figure, face contorted with passion, gripped the microphone, his voice booming a rallying cry. His fervent words echoed with the chilling declaration that this place was not their home. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room, one blue-haired girl lay still on the bed, her unmoving form watched over by another, kneeling beside her with a mixture of concern and resignation in her eyes. A young man, his face etched with a haunting blend of weariness and defiance, reflected on the true meaning of home and family, a place of absolute peace. Under a bleak, rain-swept sky, the dark-haired young man in a crisp white shirt and tie, his face shadowed, spat a venomous command, "Go back to hell." His grip tightened on a small rectangular object, perhaps a phone, as if the very touch disgusted him. A close-up revealed the same young man's face, now etched with a raw vulnerability, his eyes wide and filled with a complex mix of hurt and defiance. A faint network of scars tracing the contours of his cheek, a curt, dismissive "Go back to your hell" flashed across the screen, followed by the cold, formal rejection message from Sungin Academy, crushing the hopeful applicant's dreams. His application brutally rejected, a chilling "Go back to hell" flashing across the screen. The man stared at his phone, a grim shadow falling over his face in the sterile, rain-streaked cityscape. A dark premonition filled the air, a whisper of warning that when his world truly crumbled, there would be nowhere left to run. A burst of light erupted from the rain-slick street, accompanied by a furious curse and a command for someone to return to hell. Standing beneath their umbrellas, the platinum blonde woman and her companions grimly observed the scene, convinced they were already surrounded by hell on earth. Under a torrent of rain, a young man with dark, windswept hair roared his defiance, demanding to know where he was supposed to disappear to. The rain poured down, a torrent of sadness mirroring the despair of the blue-haired young man huddled on the steps, his phone discarded on the wet pavement beside him as blurred figures passed by, oblivious to his quiet misery. Rain lashed down on the young man's face, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and grim determination. A cracked phone lay in a puddle, a call from mom flashing unanswered on the screen. He looked down at the device, his gaze heavy with unspoken emotion. Amidst a rainy cityscape, a dark-haired man in a crisp white shirt offered a quiet hello, his back to the bustling crowd. Startled, a blue-haired figure on the other end of the phone uttered a confused "huh." Tension hung in the air as the blue-haired individual's next word dripped with suspicion. "What?" A young man, his face etched with shock and sweat beading on his brow, stood in a doorway, clearly shaken. He muttered in disbelief about the shocking nature of the situation. Nearby, a blue-haired girl sat in a hospital bed, seemingly healthy despite having been in a coma for 12 years. As someone commented on her surprisingly good condition, a blue-haired woman wept quietly in a hospital bed, comforted by a man by her side. Someone called out a name, Seung-yeon, pulling his attention. He was instructed to greet his Nuna, his older sister, who appeared bandaged and frail in the next room. Under the somber glow of a hospital's night lights, a concerned visitor urged another to stay by their sister's side, as she was feeling anxious. Someone requested that another person share the responsibility of caring for a third individual. The person addressed, slightly breathless and with a towel draped around his neck, retorted that he also had a lot to do. He further clarified that his recent graduation didn't magically grant him unlimited free time, despite the reminder that the quietly suffering girl in the hospital bed was his sister. The young man vehemently denied any connection, gesturing aggressively and scoffing at the very idea of a familial bond. Gi Seung-yeon, with a white towel draped around his neck, yelled at someone off-panel, his face contorted in rage, and a blue-haired woman watched with wide eyes. The other man, his face obscured by Sung-yeon's outburst, coldly retorted that Seung-yeon was hardly in a position to criticize anyone's words. He accused Seung-yeon of only ever speaking pleasantries, his anger escalating, gripping his hospital gown tightly. A hand trembled with suppressed emotion as a choked plea for the confrontation to stop escaped from the person's lips. With a towel draped around his neck, the young man with messy blue hair expressed his distaste for something, his gaze serious as the blue-haired woman beside him listened with wide-eyed concern. The bandaged girl, sitting stiffly in a sterile hospital bed, her blue hair framing a face etched with worry, confessed her quiet dislike for her current predicament. The young man with the towel draped around his neck reassured the worried girl beside him, his voice low and calming, his gaze intensified, eyes wide with a mixture of concern and determination. He repeated his reassurance to So-yun. His expression softened slightly despite the visible scratches on his face, his back to the reader. The blue-haired young man stood, seemingly lost in thought. A new routine of hospital visits now a significant part of his life. The young man sat reading by his sister's hospital bed, pondering his mother's wish for them to grow closer. A flicker of complex emotion crossed the hospitalized girl's face as she glanced at her brother. Lost in the pages of his book, the dark-haired young man seemed oblivious to the world around him. A hand, clad in dark fabric, reached out holding a glowing metallic chain, the faint clinking of its links cutting through the silence. In a desolate back alley, a young man honed his ethereal, glowing power, driven by an unseen force. His application was bluntly rejected, the harsh words not been accepted flashing before his eyes. The rejection clearly stung, a flicker of disappointment evident in his gaze. With a dismissive thought, asterisk as if that's gonna make a difference, asterisk. The hooded figure trudged down the sterile hospital corridor. He paused at a doorway, his expression a mixture of weariness and resignation. The blue-haired young man stood in a sterile hospital room, his back to an empty bed, a curtain fluttering in the window's breeze. He spun around, eyes widening in shock, mouth agape, a gasp escaping him. Under the dim glow of a streetlight, a lone figure sat on a park bench, seemingly lost in thought. The blue-haired woman appeared startled, her gaze drawn to something off-panel. Suddenly, a young man with dark hair burst into the scene, his exclamation of surprise echoing through the quiet park, causing the woman to cry out in alarm, frantic. The dark-haired individual finally found the blue-dressed girl and questioned her abrupt departure. She, slightly startled, apologized, explaining the overwhelming feeling that had driven her away. With a hopeful, almost pleading expression, the dark-haired young man asked if he could linger a little longer. A surprise what? Hung in the air, suggesting his request was unexpected. Two figures sat on a park bench, one engrossed in their phone, the other seemingly lost in thought. A hesitant voice broke the silence, calling out Seung-yun, drawing the phone user's attention. He anxiously fiddled with his phone, a tense question hanging in the air. Do you hate me? Startled, she stammered, confused by his sudden insecurity. Her voice was quiet as she confessed that he seemed different, more intimidating now. The young man, with a melancholic gesture, implied that the other person had lost some of their youthful charm, resembling their father. He pointed out that the discussed event happened long ago, when he was merely 5. A wistful "yeah" escaped the other person's lips, accompanied by a distant, pensive look, suggesting they barely recalled those times. Asterisk. A lone figure sat on a bench, lamenting the passage of time and how their parents had aged. They realized with a pang of loneliness that friends had drifted, their contact information lost to the changing years. Despair deepened as they confessed their inability to even attend school anymore. Suddenly, their hands clenched tightly, knuckles wide against the fabric of their sleeves, as if bracing for a revelation. Tears streamed down the blue-haired girl's face as a wave of loneliness washed over her, the world suddenly feeling vast and empty. A nearby figure, his face partially obscured by shadows, watched her with wide, concerned eyes. Alone amidst a bustling schoolyard, a dark-haired student hung his head, eyes glued to his phone, a palpable sense of isolation clinging to him. Distraught, a blue-haired girl covered her face, questioning the absurdity of the situation through her tears. Under the dim glow of streetlights, a young man with dark hair slumped, seemingly burdened by loneliness, as a comforting voice reminded him of his family's presence. He was gently reassured that being alone didn't preclude forming new connections. With a serious, almost pleading expression, the speaker continued, emphasizing that the inability to attend school shouldn't prevent him from making friends. With a sharp look, he confirmed the thought. The path to becoming a hunter wasn't solely through the academy. After all, even the renowned Ju Yong-hyung had forged his own way, never stepping foot in a school. A young man with dark hair and a determined gaze declared it was too soon to surrender. A blue-haired woman, seemingly downcast, offered a quiet thanks, her voice barely above a whisper. Under the dusky sky, the young man in a hoodie suggested they head back. A voice laced with surprise questioned how he'd arrived without his wheelchair. The words hanging in the air. His shadowed face, caught in a close-up, held a complex expression, a flicker of defiance, perhaps, or a hint of something concealed. Beneath the swirling, star-dusted sky, a young woman with light blue hair seemed to float effortlessly, her patterned pajamas almost glowing in the ethereal light as a young man below watched. Captivated by her graceful descent, startled by something, the blue-haired girl exclaimed in surprise. Dreamily, she recalled a journey to the fairy realm she'd taken in her sleep. The blue-haired boy listened with wide, shocked eyes as she revealed the secret learned in that mystical land. A figure in a green hooded jacket, gripping a microphone, addressed a crowd, proclaiming to be returnees from another world. A tense silence hung in the air before a sharp-faced man in suspenders coldly informed a dark-haired individual that their talent was insufficient for becoming a hunter. The blue-haired girl, seemingly defying gravity, floated effortlessly through the air, a dismissive "not with your abilities" echoing in her wake. From below, a lone figure, clad in dark clothing, sat on a park bench, his gaze drawn upwards as the girl's shoes seemed to fall from the sky. Sparkling with an ethereal light, the blue-haired young man in the dark hoodie, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief, seemed to have just witnessed something utterly unexpected. A woman gasped in surprise, her hand flying to her mouth as she took in the scene before her. Someone observed the two dirt-covered children. The children, a boy and a girl, defended their muddy state, proclaiming they'd been playing in the dirt. They confirmed their playful escapade with a touch of defiance. A caring voice urged a little one inside for a shower and dinner, sensing their hunger after a fun-filled day. The child, though wanting to play more, agreed to continue the fun tomorrow. A poignant narration followed, hinting at the fleeting nature of such perfect days. A sentiment echoed in the image of a small girl with bright eyes watching a parent and another child stroll away, the warm afternoon sun casting long shadows on the pavement. However, a small figure stood solemnly before a deserted playground, a symbol of the unknown future that awaits everyone. The warm hues of sunset painted the apartment complex, hinting at the domesticity within. A mother tended to her two young children, one splashing gleefully in the bath while the other received a gentle hair wash in a basin. Later, the family gathered around the dining table, the mother beaming as she fed her youngest child. Surrounded by the quiet contentment of a shared meal, a small girl, sitting on the floor and yawning widely, watched as another child slept soundly. On the couch, a blanket pulled over them while an adult figure lingered nearby. Later, tucked into her own bed, the little girl's wide, bright eyes stared out from beneath the covers, anticipation and perhaps a hint of mischief dancing within them. A young girl, tucked in bed, pondered with a sweet smile, wondering what games they would play tomorrow. Lost in happy anticipation, her expression softened as she whispered tomorrow, the word echoing the hopeful dreams filling her mind. A vibrant blue eye opened, hinting at an awakening. A translucent, ethereal figure drifted in a starry expanse. As if in a dream, the dark-haired girl lying in bed, seemingly asleep, greeted the figure with a warm "Hi, my friend." A luminous figure, wreathed in ethereal light, declared someone chosen by their world. Then, the ethereal being extended an invitation to join them on a quest to save the world, their voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. Overwhelmed with awe and excitement, a girl with vibrant blue hair gasped, her eyes sparkling with wonder at the incredible proposition. After a 6-month sojourn in the mystical fairy world, the traveler returned to their own realm. However, upon their arrival, they discovered a shocking truth. 12 years had vanished in what felt like mere months. The blue-haired girl, clad in a hospital gown, stared ahead with an unnerving certainty in her glowing eyes, a quiet conviction radiating from her. In a sterile hospital room, a young woman lay in bed, a faint ethereal glow surrounding her as two figures, presumably her parents, watched with a mixture of concern and awe. A grim-faced official addressed the worried parents, confirming their daughter's status as a returnee, his words heavy with unspoken implications. A man explained that the bracelet, designed to suppress the powers of awakeners, lay inert before them, its magic seemingly useless against a returnee, whose hand it adorned. At a hospital bedside, a bespectacled man inquired about the fairy's actions in another world, his gaze fixed on Miss So-Yun. So-Yun, her hair shimmering with an otherworldly glow, weakly confirmed the fairies had indeed shared some information with her. A shimmering fairy tale castle sparkled against a cerulean sky, prompting thoughts of what dangers lurked in this magical realm. The focus shifted to the essentials for navigating this enchanting yet perilous world. Mastering magic. Survival in this fantastical land clearly depended on the knowledge held within a stack of glowing mystical books. A figure, cloaked in blue, radiating an aura of power, pondered aloud the strategies for survival against a formidable queen. The bespectacled man below, startled by the mention of royalty, questioned the identity with evident apprehension. The blue-haired woman pondered the alleged wickedness of the queen, recalling a promise of freedom if she dared to reprimand the royal. A thoughtful pause hung in the air as she seemed to consider her options. A sharp-eyed man with spectacles, his face hardened with a grim expression, delivered a chilling accusation. The queen was dead by her hand, the dark-haired woman exclaimed, in apparent disbelief as the blue-haired woman explained how a tense situation involving the queen had been surprisingly resolved. She clarified that although she herself possessed no dangerous magic, the inherent abilities of a returnee like her were still considered a threat. A stern-faced man with glasses, listening intently, seemed to agree, his expression hinting at a lingering unease about the situation. A powerful figure, a returnee from another world, stepped through a doorway, their sneakers crossing the threshold. The implication hung heavy in the air. Miss So-yeon, too, was one of these extraordinary individuals. The hooded young man listened impassively as he was informed his power surpassed even that of an S-class hunter. The figures in suits standing stiffly behind him. A sense of unease crept in as the implications were laid bare. Even if his abilities seemed stable now, their very nature could shift and change with his return. With a worried glance, one woman expressed their hope that the hospitalized girl's parents would be able to control her. A chilling addendum followed, stating that this measure was taken to ensure the girl could no longer use her powers. The blue-haired woman appeared taken aback, a flicker of surprise in her wide eyes. A man in a suit gravely informed someone that a hunter from the bureau would be observing them the following day. The hooded figure, listening from the doorway, seemed to take the news with quiet resignation. The dark-haired young man, clad in a hoodie and light pants, walked away, seemingly lost in thought. A hand, presumably belonging to someone he just interacted with, extended, holding out a stark white card. A curt "thank you for your inquiry" accompanied the offered card, leaving the air thick with unanswered questions. Ji Sung-yeon's imposing figure, clad in a dark hoodie, strode down a sterile hallway, his physical prowess clearly evident. A dark-haired figure, seen from behind, was deemed unsuitable for battling monsters. The focus shifted to shimmering chains, their strength and durability revealed to be surprisingly subpar. It was ominously declared that these chains held no special abilities, making them alarmingly ordinary. A ghostly chain lay scattered, its ethereal form deemed weaker than a regular chain. An assessment followed, swift and merciless. Slumped on a bench, the dark-haired figure absorbed the crushing weight of the F-class ranking. His lips curved into a subtle, almost imperceptible line. A voice, seemingly strained with emotion, breathed the name Seung-yeon. His eyes, dark and intense, flickered with an unreadable emotion. He sat hunched on the bench, his gaze fixed downward, while she stood before him, wringing her hands in what seemed like a mixture of anxiety and apprehension. The blue-haired girl, a nervous smile playing on her lips, reassured someone unseen that there was nothing to fear. With a serious tone, she insisted, her words laced with urgency, that nothing had changed from the past. The blue-haired girl, her face etched with a mixture of frustration and sadness, curtly told someone to leave her alone. A confused sound escaped the other person, seemingly surprised by her sharp dismissal. Her voice tight with emotion, she reiterated her demand for solitude, her words laced with a desperate plea for space. The blue-haired woman's face, seen in profile, held a look of quiet contemplation. A soft, confused "why" escaped her lips, her expression shifting to bewildered distress. Her fingers fidgeted nervously against the patterned fabric of her clothing, the question echoing in her mind. But why? His face contorted with a mix of anger and pain as he began a choked question. He erupted, his voice a raw scream, demanding she leave him alone. The girl, her purple hair framing a shocked expression, recoiled from his outburst. The blue-haired girl, her expression a mixture of surprise and slight distress, spoke to someone unseen. Her words seemed to catch the other person off guard, judging by her widened eyes as she glanced up at the figure towering over her. A tense silence hung in the air, as the hooded figure remained hunched, his face obscured, while the girl, now in a pale blue suit, stood rigidly with her back to him, the swirling gray background emphasizing the heavy atmosphere between them. A hooded figure walked through a bustling street, seemingly lost in thought. His gaze shifted, a subtle smirk playing on his lips as if noticing something of interest. Suddenly, a blue-haired girl's face filled the frame, her expression a mixture of shock and concern. Lost in thought, the dark-haired figure stood amidst the bustling city street, questioning his own actions. He then muttered to himself, disgusted by his perceived weakness. Panic flashed across the gray-haired young man's face as he wondered what to do. His anxious thoughts were interrupted by the growing crowd around him. He looked around, bewildered, trying to understand what was causing the commotion. The gray-haired young man seemed to freeze, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Amidst a crowd, a bloodied figure in a torn white and black uniform stood, a stark contrast to the uniformed men around him. A gasp escaped the young man's lips. "Dad?" he whispered, disbelief and dawning horror mixing in his voice. Under a star-dusted sky, a hospital stood silent and imposing. Inside, a blue-haired girl sat pensively on a hospital bed, gazing out the window at the night. The blue-haired girl, clad in a patterned robe, wore a look of quiet contemplation, her expression a mix of sadness and resolve, overcome with grief. A dark-haired figure hunched over, their face obscured by shadow and streaked with tears against a backdrop of stark lines. A small boy with messy dark hair, clad in a denim jacket, played exuberantly in a sandbox, his face lit up with pure joy. The scene shifted to a close-up of a young woman with dark blue hair, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, a blush dusting her cheeks, hinting at a complex and possibly painful memory. A messy, starlit room hinted at a hasty departure. Suddenly, under a large, luminous moon, a dark-haired figure in star-patterned pajamas walked as if floating above a sprawling cityscape. Bathed in an ethereal glow, bathed in a soft, ethereal glow, the dark-haired girl in a hospital gown drifted, as if weightless, her gaze fixed on something beyond the frame. A hint of wonderment gracing her lips. A lone figure in a tailored suit stood before a decaying playground, overgrown with luminous green vines, an ethereal glow emanating from the scene. Later, in a sunlit playground, a small girl with short, dark hair stared pensively at the familiar structure. The bright colors a stark contrast to the earlier, eerie image. Amidst the playful chaos of bath time, a mother smiled as she washed her energetic children, one happily splashing in the tub, and the other patiently awaiting their turn. Later, the family gathered around the dinner table, a warm and contented scene of shared mealtime, the mother watching her children eat with a wistful fondness. Overcome with a powerful longing, she yearned to return to these precious moments. Overwhelmed by grief, the blue-haired figure cried, yearning desperately to return to a cherished moment in the past. A pregnant pause followed, filled only with the weight of their unspoken emotions, before they began to speak. Their voice thick with unshed tears, alone amidst a desolate, tile-strewn room, a woman declared her unsettling presence. To figures, a man and a woman, reacted with startled gasps, their eyes fixed on her from the shadows. The woman's face, now in a dramatic close-up, was contorted in a chilling expression of intense focus, perhaps malice or determination. The woman with long teal hair whirled around, startled, demanding to know who was there. Two men, one in a dark jacket and the other in a crisp shirt and tie, reacted to her sudden movement, one urging the other to calm down and question her identity instead. Lost and seemingly terrified, the dark-haired girl's face flushed as a sharp voice cut through the ominous woods, demanding to know her location. A confused and hesitant sorry escaped her lips, barely a whisper against the backdrop of the shadowy trees. A voice warned that the area, closed off years ago due to a dangerous dungeon breach, wasn't safe, especially for those less fortunate. A young woman with long, dark blue hair, standing apart from the others, seemed to absorb the unsettling news with a quiet, thoughtful, "Is that so?" Someone, seemingly surprised by the person in hospital pants' lack of awareness, questioned if they were an outsider. An offer to escort them out was quickly met with a flustered reassurance that they knew the way, with a declaration of self-sufficiency. The figures swung a blunt weapon, a burst of light erupting on impact with their target. The struck person crumpled, a soft gasp escaping their lips as they fell. Their face, now obscured by long, dark hair, expressed stunned confusion. A young man in dark clothes stood over a girl in light, patterned pajamas, a baseball bat lying near her, his words hinting at a disturbing possessiveness. Another, clad in blue, approached, his voice filled with fury and grief, demanding answers about the girl's fate. The dark-haired man remained seated, his posture suggesting a cold indifference. The scene heavy with unspoken tension. A bandaged hand reached out from the debris, a silent testament to a recent struggle. Annoyance tinged the rescuer's voice, pointing out the irony of the situation despite their help. Startled, three men, two with dark hair and one with lighter hair, reacted to an unseen commotion with confusion and alarm. The man with the gray hair looked to the others with a questioning "huh?" The blue-haired girl, battered and bruised, struggled to rise amidst the debris. A mocking laugh echoed as someone observed her unexpected revival. Her eyes snapped open, wide with shock and pain, a startled gasp escaping her lips. A surge of panic washed over her as she registered her precarious situation. A man in camouflage pants, gripping a bat-like weapon, questioned his companion's ability to inflict damage, as their target seemed unharmed. Confused, he muttered to himself about the force of his blow. Perplexed by the lack of visible injury, the blue-haired woman, a fresh wound on her face, wondered in dazed confusion why she had been struck. High above, two figures observed the scene below with a sense of grim satisfaction. A red-haired man, armed with a bat, cautiously descended towards the debris-strewn ground. Below, a blue-haired woman, seemingly cornered and afraid, desperately warned them to stay back. Under a dark, ominous sky, a young woman with long blue hair, a streak of blood marking her face, reached out desperately, her voice laced with a frantic warning that she would shoot if provoked further. Two men, one with a baseball bat and the other in a smart suit, cruelly mocked an unseen woman, speculating about her sanity as a gloved hand reached towards them, crackling with an unnerving energy. A ghostly figure, radiating an otherworldly glow, eagerly presented a mystical tone, suggesting they delve into its secrets. Intrigued, the figure paused, sensing the magic emanating from within the book's pages. Suddenly, a surge of power manifested, revealing a vibrant, glowing symbol within someone's eye, declaring the magic to be archery. A girl, radiating a brilliant light, reassured someone unseen. A streak of blood tracing a path down her cheek, yet a wide, almost manic grin splitting her face. The light coalesced into a shimmering, arrow-like form emanating from her, a potent energy thrumming within it, promising not death, but a different fate for those caught in its path. With a confident declaration that the petrification would be brief, the dark-haired figure in white unleashed a brilliant, diamond-shaped burst of energy illuminating the star-dusted darkness. Crimson loomed violently against a stark white backdrop. A face, framed by reddish-brown hair, stared ahead, eyes wide with shock and a hint of dawning horror. The bespectacled man warned that no power, however secure it seemed, would remain unchanged after a certain return. The red-haired man gasped, his face tilted upwards in apparent shock or revelation, as darkness swirled around him. Two other men, seemingly his companions, looked up in awe and alarm, bathed in an ominous red glow. A figure with vibrant pink hair floated serenely amidst a shower of twinkling stars. Suddenly, a second figure plummeted downwards, framed by a stark explosion of dark, inky splatters. A hushed "oh" echoed, tinged with dawning realization and dread. Bathed in a disturbing pink glow. A young woman with dark hair, her face streaked with blood, stared in wide-eyed terror, a bloody hand reaching out towards her as if to grasp her throat. The dark-haired young man in the hoodie, surrounded by a throng of faceless people, wondered aloud what was causing the commotion. A hush fell over the crowd as an unseen event unfolded, drawing their attention. The young man, his face now etched with curiosity, leaned in for a better look, straining to hear above the low murmur of the crowd. A bloodied man, his white uniform stained crimson, stood amidst a crowd, his posture suggesting defeat and despair. A whispered question, full of disbelief and dawning horror, hung in the air. "Dad?" The gaze shifted to a close-up of a scarred and bloodied face, a futuristic helmet askew. The question hanging heavy with unspoken grief and the chilling confirmation of a terrible truth. A bloodied figure, his face partially obscured by a mask, was being supported by a grim-faced man in a blood-splattered uniform. Two onlookers whispered amongst themselves, one with a look of astonishment, suspecting the injured man's identity as a famous YouTuber. His companion's face broke into a wide, incredulous grin at the news. A scarred face, seen in profile, whispered a chilling question, eyes narrowed with morbid curiosity. A dark-haired young man, amidst a crowd of faceless onlookers, stared wide-eyed, a mixture of fear and fascination in his gaze. The man in the crisp white shirt, a stark X harnessing his back, stood stoically before a line of uniformed officers, a splash of crimson at his hip hinting at violence. A body lay covered on the street, surrounded by police and onlookers, a grim tableau unfolding under the watchful eyes of a suited man. The blood-splattered man confronted the hooded youth, demanding to know his whereabouts and why he abandoned his sister. The young man muttered defensively, claiming he was merely taking a short walk. A bloodied man, his face grim, stared off into the distance. The dark-haired young man, his gaze intense, quietly confirmed it was his first encounter with death. A scarred man uttered a chilling statistic, for out of 10. Another's eyes widened in stunned realization at the implications. The grim truth was revealed. It was the previous year's mortality rate in the dangerous world of huntering. A grim statistic hung in the air. 2 out of 10 hunters would face devastating injuries. The chilling consequence for another, PTSD, forcing him to abandon the hunt entirely. A somber-faced young man with dark blue hair, clad in a hooded jacket, reflected on the harsh reality there were no exceptions for hunter, novice or veteran. A bloodied man, his white shirt stained crimson, declared grimly that this was just the way of their world. As another, darker-haired man leaned against him, seemingly injured. His expression hardened. The bloodied man questioned the other's ability to survive in such a harsh reality. His face, etched with a flicker of uncertainty, hinted at an internal struggle before he vehemently denied something unseen. The blood-splattered man, his tie askew, looked down at the injured, dark-haired youth with a chilling mix of pity and disdain, his words implying the younger man's spirit had finally broken. Under a star-dusted sky, a hospital stood tall, its green cross a beacon in the night. A lone figure with messy gray hair walked away from a brightly lit building, their dark hoodie blending with the shadows. With a quiet affirmation, the figure seemed to confirm a thought or decision. Under a cerulean sky, the gray-haired figure stood with their back to the viewer, a melancholic resignation in their posture as they lamented their unchanging nature. Their confession of inadequacy hung heavy in the air, followed by a stark image of broken and tangled chains scattered across a dark surface, a visual metaphor for their perceived limitations. Bloodied and bruised, the figure in the crisp, now stained uniform slumped against a dark backdrop, the harsh reality of his situation stark against the remnants of his composure. He wrestled with the grim truth, desperately trying to deny the wounds and the circumstances that led to them. A powerful team of diverse individuals, led by a sharp-suited figure, radiated strength and purpose from the television screen. The scene shifted to a small child, eyes wide with awe and wonder, completely captivated by the unfolding drama on the display, lost in thought. The young man sat bathed in the flickering glow of the television, a sense of uncertainty washing over him. He tilted his head back, his expression troubled, grappling with the daunting question of his own desires. The thought of becoming a hunter lingered in the air as a figure, wreathed in crimson and stardust, hovered above. He stopped, turning his head towards the sky, a flicker of surprise in his gaze at the otherworldly sight. Confusion painted his features as he tilted his head back further, questioning the bizarre apparition before him. A young man in dark clothes looked up in stunned disbelief at the blood-splattered legs of a figure looming over him, a spark of horrified recognition flashing across his face. A figure with long, vibrant crimson hair and a strangely obscured face emerged, their white and patterned attire stained with crimson, surrounded by a mystical, starry aura. Shocked, a young man with dark hair stared, sweat beading on his face, a single, bewildered "huh" escaping his lips. Panic seized the observer as they noticed the crimson stains marring the pink-haired woman's clothes, a frantic question escaping their lips. Fear intensified as they anxiously inquired about her well-being. Dizziness seemed to overcome the injured woman as she swayed, prompting a desperate plea to understand the events that led to her current state. The bespectacled man in the suit mused about the inherent danger of a returnee's abilities. A burst of vibrant pink energy erupted, accompanied by a desperate plea to stay away. Fear gripped the dark-haired man as he witnessed the unnerving display of power, a single drop of sweat rolling down his face as he stammered in confusion. A figure with crimson hair fell back, a trickle of blood tracing a path down their face. Amidst a shower of shimmering particles, below, a pink-haired individual, face streaked with tears and a fresh wound, cried out in anguish. A vibrant pink aura swirling around them, a desperate plea, a warning charged with raw emotion, ripped through the air, demanding distance. Bathed in a vibrant pink light, the pink-haired individual cried out, their face contorted in what seemed like a mixture of pain and ecstasy. Then, under the twilight sky, a hospital glowed with an ominous red aura. Partially obscured by a row of trees, a vibrant fuchsia explosion ripped through the air, scattering debris and radiating raw power. The speaker nervously revealed she was currently outside the hospital, the jagged speech bubble emphasizing the unsettling tension. A bruised and bloodied young man, his dark hair falling around his face, sat hunched against a tree. His expression a mixture of shock and fear as a dire warning echoed around him, repeated for emphasis. A shadowy figure, wreathed in dark energy, hovered menacingly outside a building. A surge of pink power erupted from below, revealing a figure with shocking pink hair, their face a mask of anguish and fury as they unleashed a torrent of raw energy. Amidst a backdrop of vibrant, swirling magenta energy, a young man with dark, tousled hair and a bloodied face issued a desperate warning to stay inside. He burst from the source of the pulsating energy, his expression a mixture of grim determination and pained urgency, as a voice cried out in disbelief and terror, questioning his sanity and actions. A desperate cry pierced the air, "Stop at once," as the pink-haired figure writhed in agony, tears streaming down her face. Amidst a swirling vortex of dark energy, overcome with anguish, she sobbed, "No, I don't want to." Her voice cracking with terror and despair, a desperate plea to stop echoed through the air. As streaks of vibrant pink energy crackled and swirled menacingly, the source of the energy, a figure with glowing eyes and a face marred by battle, roared their unwillingness to kill, their voice strained with an inner conflict. A figure with pink hair cried out in anguish, a resounding nitrogen monoxide, echoing through the swirling vortex of dark magenta energy. As the pink-haired figure was consumed by the ominous aura, a dark-haired individual clad in black reached out a hand, seemingly manipulating the vibrant, malevolent power. A disembodied voice urged those inside a building to remain calm, assuring them the police were on their way. The pink-haired figure, face streaked with blood and eyes wide with a manic energy, shielded their eyes against a blinding light. The unseen narrator revealed the chaotic truth. This person was unleashing their powers recklessly. Upon the unsuspecting street, A chilling order for immediate execution crackled through the air, painting the scene crimson with impending violence. Panic seized the young man, his face contorted in fear as he frantically clutched his head, desperately trying to formulate a plan to warn his father. A sudden realization struck him, chilling him to the bone. The police, not his father, offered the swiftest path to safety. A single, startled eye widened in the vibrant magenta light, the pupil shrinking to a pinpoint. A silent pause hung heavy in the air, followed by a stunned realization. Me? The pink-haired figure turned, their back to the unseen speaker. A tattered jacket hanging loose round their frame. A bloodied hand, scarred and trembling, came into view, clutching at something unseen. The wounded figure, a young man with pink hair and a bruised face, stared down at his injured hand in disbelief, a crimson glow emanating from the fresh wounds. A desperate cry escaped him, a resounding no, filled with anguish and denial. Overwhelmed by a powerful opponent, a figure shrouded in darkness realized his defeat was inevitable against his Nuna. Panic flashing in his eyes, the young man with the dark hair made a desperate decision. He had to flee. Turning his back on the looming threat, he prepared for a hasty retreat, his resolve etched in the determined set of his jaw. Amidst a backdrop of vibrant pink energy and shattered debris, the dark-haired figure, his back to the viewer, insisted on his innocence. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by his whispered, unfinished thought. His face, now turned to the side, revealed streaks of blood against pale skin, his expression a mixture of anguish and uncertainty. A scarred young man loomed over a small, huddled child. The child, seemingly startled, shrank back slightly. Suddenly, the child's eyes widened in apparent shock or realization. A young man, bruised and bloodied, stared in stunned disbelief as swirling violet energy crackled around him. Consumed by a sudden, all-encompassing hatred, the pink-haired figure, clad in tattered clothes, recoiled in midair, their anguish echoing in the silent scream. A chilling, otherworldly hum filled the void, hinting at an unseen, ominous presence. Gripped by a sudden surge of despair, the pink-haired figure clutched their head. Blood splattered across their ornate robe, and cried out their refusal to continue. The anguished plea hung heavy in the air, a desperate whisper of "I don't want to do this anymore." A voice, filled with concern and perhaps a hint of fear, called out Nuna. Breaking the silence, a face, streaked with tears and blood, cried out a desperate Nuna. Amidst a chaotic explosion of pink energy, a figure with vibrant purple hair lunged forward, their bloodied hand outstretched in a fierce attack. A vibrant-haired man, his face marked with a bloody gash, roared desperately, trying to reach someone. Called Nuna. He urged her to pull herself together, his voice strained with concern. Overwhelmed by a surge of emotion and pain, the pink-haired woman cried out, a name soon yet escaping her lips in anguished recognition. A scarred man, his face grim, acknowledged the harsh realities of their world. With a fierce determination, a pink-haired figure confirmed his understanding, a streak of pink energy flashing across his face. The weight of the situation settled in. Risking one's life for others was the only way. With a fierce roar and blood streaking his face, the vibrant-haired hunter declared his purpose with unwavering conviction. He urgently called out to someone, his tone a mix of command and reassurance, urging them to stay calm amidst the chaos. Amidst a chaotic swirl of vibrant purple energy, a figure with long pink hair clutched their chest, a pained expression etched on their face as words of comfort and warning echoed around them. Consumed by a desperate confusion, the pink-haired individual questioned the lengths someone was going to for their sake. Bloody hands reached out, fingers twitching. As a chilling realization dawned, their femininity was lost, replaced by something horrifying. The hands, one bloodied and worn, the other pristine and glowing, reached for each other amidst a swirling vortex of vibrant energy. A woman's eye, wide with alarm and a flicker of recognition, stared intensely as if searching for answers. Within a dreamscape of swirling snow and starlight, the woman, now in simple pajamas, gently held the hands of a small, ethereal winged being, a radiant, ethereal being, seemingly glowing from within. Proclaimed So Yen the hero who saved their world. Beneath her, a young woman with long, dark hair and thoughtful eyes quietly refuted the grand title. Under a somber, rain-streaked sky, a distraught young woman with dark hair stammered a desperate plea. She confessed to being an adult only in appearance, her youthful face etched with pain. Her hands, clasped tightly together, trembled as she admitted to her isolation and dangerous nature. The chilling revelation hung in the air. She had taken a life, a pale figure with white hair, surrounded by a blue, almost watery aura, lamented that everyone hated them. A voice, seemingly out of nowhere, refuted this despairing claim. A figure, cloaked in shadowy maroon, chains of energy crackling around them, began a fierce retort. with glowing pink eyes, filled with an intense, unknown emotion. The cloaked figure continued, a dramatic pause hanging in the air, amidst a swirling vortex of crimson energy. A young man with dark hair and a determined grimace wielded a glowing, chain-like weapon, seemingly shielding a wounded, pink-haired figure floating helplessly behind him. It was an act of unexpected heroism, a baffling paradox of risking one's life to save someone they supposedly despised. A pale face, framed by white hair, appeared lost in thought as a voice commanded So Yun to return. A bloodied hand reached out, desperately grasping a glowing chain amidst a vibrant, chaotic backdrop. The voice continued, urging So Yun toward a place where destiny awaited. Amidst the shattered pavement and flashing police lights, he cradled her close, a glimmer of ethereal light surrounding them in the somber night. A young woman with blue hair, streaked with blood, cried out in anguish, seemingly held by another figure. Chapter 3 begins with a solemn declaration that this place is my home, suggesting a deep, perhaps tragic, connection to the setting. A bruised and bloodied young man with similar blue hair looked down with a somber expression, possibly at the injured woman he cradled. A wounded warrior, his face streaked with blood, stared intently at something unseen. A small boy nestled amongst debris, clasped his hands together with an excited "yeah." A bloodied face, marked with determination, whispered a self-assured "I can do it." Across a debris-strewn street, under a starlit sky, police officers observed a lone figure amidst the wreckage as someone approached, calling out a wary "hey," with a sly grin. The man with headphones draped around his neck asked his companion if she had noticed a certain boy. Her bespectacled face revealed a negative response. A chilling incident unfolded under the cloak of night. The authorities swiftly resolved the matter, keeping it hushed. The unsettling event, barely a ripple in the public eye, left a grim stain on the pavement, cordoned off by a stark police line. A grim scene of bloodshed lay behind police tape, hinting at a tragedy. A young woman with dark, short hair and a solemn expression stared blankly ahead, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. The narrative shifted, promising an even smaller, more personal story. A lone figure, huddled in a stark room, stared downwards, their blue uniforms stark contrast to the blood-stained tray and crumpled papers scattered nearby. A uniformed guard announced visitation time through the bars of a cell. The blue-haired inmate's gaze flickered with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. A young woman in simple blue attire, flanked by suited figures, walked down a sterile hallway. Her head bowed. A heartbroken cry of mom escaped the bandaged girl's lips, her face etched with sorrow as another woman wept beside her, devastated by the girl's evident pain. The weight of the girl's grief was palpable, a silent testament to a profound loss that had left her utterly shattered. A dark-haired man observed a bandaged young woman escorted into the room by a uniformed officer, a silent question hanging in the air. Her wide, pale eyes flickered with uncertainty as she wondered what to say. A man in a dark suit and a young woman with bandaged head sat across from each other. At a small table, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Hesitantly, her voice trembling, the young woman started to speak, finally addressing the man as Dad. He arrived, a dark figure against the sterile backdrop, his words a promise of freedom to the bandaged woman sitting across from him. A man, his face etched with seriousness, reminded someone about the woman his mother had brought over recently. He revealed that the woman was a memory reader whom he'd hired, and she had delved into the memories of a specific, concerning incident. As he spoke, a bespectacled woman stood behind him, her expression unreadable, while another woman, her blue hair framing a distressed face, listened intently, her hand to her mouth. He then gravely added that she had successfully accessed the memories of the incident they were discussing. The blue-haired girl absorbed a startling revelation, her eyes wide with dawning understanding. A fierce battle unfolded. Someone in dark clothing retaliated against an unseen aggressor with a burst of vibrant energy. The dark-clad figure acted in self-defense, forced to respond to a prior attack. Someone reassured the bandaged girl that her actions were legally justified and she wouldn't face prosecution. Confused and overwhelmed, she grappled with the implications of justified reaction and prosecuted. She quietly repeated the words, still trying to process the situation. He assured the bandaged girl of her release, confirming her innocence. She lowered her gaze, burdened by the knowledge of a death connected to her. Despite her own exoneration, the dark-suited figure, leaning thoughtfully on the table, delivered shocking news. The person shot had survived. Astonished, the bandaged individual gasped in disbelief. Reassuringly, the suited figure explained that specialized healers could mend even grievous wounds, and the victim was likely recovering well. The blue-haired woman's tense face relaxed as she heard the words assuring her of innocence on that fateful day. A silent, empty panel followed, amplifying the weight of the revelation. Then, with a hushed exhale, she expressed profound relief. Tears streamed down the bandaged girl's face as she hiccuped. Overwhelmed with relief, lost in thought, a man with dark hair held his chin, a quiet "what a relief" escaping his lips. The woman in the smart belted coat, a slight smirk playing on her lips, inquired if her companion was finally finished speaking. The man in the dark suit, his expression weary but attentive, quietly confirmed that he was. Bad news was delivered. The hospital damage couldn't be fully covered. Standing in the sterile hospital corridor, the taller, sharply dressed figure informed the other that a fine would be necessary. Relieved, the shorter person expressed gratitude that the consequences weren't more severe. Gratitude was brushed aside. A shared debt acknowledged to Hunterji Shinbeek, a terse confirmation. Hung in the air between the sharply dressed man and the bespectacled woman, his gaze intense, hers tinged with unease. A quiet worry surfaced, laced with the inevitable revelation that loomed over an unnamed woman's future. A chilling question hung in the air, implying the victim of an assault, perpetrated by someone's daughter, had met a grim end. In a sterile, shadowed hallway, two figures stood, the stark light from the windows casting long, dramatic silhouettes. A hushed, loaded question followed, confirming the dark implication. The assaulted person had indeed died. A shadowed face, eyes filled with a mixture of concern and calculation, pondered the precarious mental state of a woman and the impending revelation of a hidden truth. Two figures, dressed in dark attire, stood behind a young woman with long, dark hair and bandages on her head. Her expression etched with quiet sadness, a quiet, resigned "I suppose," hung in the air, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and the uncertain path ahead. As an afterthought, the sharply dressed man offered an envelope to the woman, a seemingly mundane exchange in a sterile office setting. Intrigued, she questioned the contents of the mysterious package. He revealed it was a document concerning her daughter, the words hanging heavy with unspoken implications. The recipient's hands tightened around the envelope, her expression unreadable as she began to examine the document within. A shadow of apprehension falling across her face, a disembodied voice echoed the question, "Who is it?" A stern-faced man in a dark suit, his brow furrowed in anger, gripped something white tightly, his knuckles whitening. The long-haired figure, a bandage peeking from under their sleek hair, sat casually against a brick wall, snacking on chips, and contemplating a mysterious delivery with a suspicious air. With a fierce grin and bandage across his forehead, the young man unleashed a glowing chain. Wielding it with raw power, the chain hurtled through the air towards a row of colorful cans perched on a shelf, the metallic links shimmering with an unnatural light. Snapping taut, the chain wrapped itself tightly around two of the cans, its glow intensifying as it secured its prize. The bandaged young man huffed in exasperation, clearly agitated by someone's presence. He turned to his companion, bewildered, demanding to know the mysterious person's identity. The other man, dressed in dark clothes, shrugged, equally clueless about the enigma before them. Frustration mounted as the bandaged man explained that even after taking certain measures, the perplexing individual continued their strange behavior all day. The long-haired man tossed a snack towards the bandaged one, urging him to focus on his task and not worry about him. Annoyed, the bandaged youth demanded the older man get rid of the snacks, claiming they were distracting. The snacker, looking surprised, wondered if his presence was the real source of the younger man's distress. With a reluctant sigh, the bandaged fighter admitted that, indeed, it was. The bandaged man's expression hardened as he questioned the other's combat readiness. The suited man, holding a small object between his fingers, pointed out the unpredictable nature of their dungeon environment. He delivered a sharp warning, implying dire consequences if the bandaged man's composure faltered under pressure. A sneering figure, likely an antagonist, held something small between their fingers, commenting on their opponent's lack of training. Then a bandaged young man, his expression a mix of confusion and concern, asked a dark-haired individual if they recognized him. The dark-haired person, seemingly startled, stared at a faint, glowing chain materializing between them. The teal-haired individual's gaze pierced with an accusatory question about the other's immediate aggression. He retorted with a challenging rhetorical question about the extent of his training. With a sharp and confident tone, the dark-haired man with scars, arms crossed, acknowledged the implied effort. The tension crackling between them, the bandaged young man stared, startled, as another figure casually held a small object, seemingly oblivious to the former's presence. A voice, seemingly out of nowhere, complimented the bandaged youth's physical abilities and sharp senses, yet criticized his lack of skill. Suddenly realizing he'd been approached unnoticed, the bandaged one reacted with a mixture of alarm and confusion. Glowing, ethereal chains materialized around one figure's wrist, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The scarred man, his expression, a mixture of smugness and something darker, gestured knowingly, explaining that the chains were forged from the other's own power, requiring a constant influx to be controlled. The blue-haired young man, a bandage across his cheek, was told his strength, though impressive, lacked finesse, making his actions imprecise, surrounded by a subtle blue aura. The dark-haired man in a smart suit casually remarked that true professionals exercised restraint, with their power holding a snack in one hand. With a confident gest like this, a hand, possibly his own, reached down, radiating a similar blue energy, and effortlessly manipulated small golden, block-like objects on a jagged, golden surface. The dark-haired man, clad in a suit and headphones, hurled a small red object with surprising force. The object, revealed to be a can, hurtled towards its target with a burst of light and energy. The bandaged recipient's eyes widened in shock as the projectile closed in with alarming speed. The long-haired figure, headphones slung around their neck, smirked, asking a question that seemed to hang in the air, met with wide-eyed surprise from their companion. A stunned silence followed, quickly broken by the realization of an impressive feat. Crushed cans littered the floor, evidence of some unseen force. Yet miraculously, the snacks remained untouched. A shadowy figure observed a tense exchange between two others, a sense of intrigue hanging heavy in the air. As one turned to leave, he paused, adding a cryptic remark about the other man's untapped potential. With a sly grin, the man offered a curious, leaf-wrapped cylinder, claiming it held the power to summon returnees. The cylinder hovered, emanating a soft, otherworldly glow as it neared someone's glowing spectral chains, promising a mysterious connection. A surge of turquoise energy crackled between the bandaged man in white and the darker-haired figure, their hands clasped. The dark-haired figure's expression shifted, a knowing smirk playing on their lips as if a suspicion had just been confirmed. With a sharp gaze, the bandaged man pressed the other, huddled on the ground for answers about a shared, unsettling memory from the hospital. The scarred man, leaning against his car, exclaimed that he had witnessed something crucial. He revealed a chilling detail: the moment the other person's chains had come into contact with his sister, something significant had occurred. Amidst a swirling vortex of crimson energy, the pink-haired girl cried out in anguish, a spectral blue chain dissolving before her as someone delivered the devastating news that her sister's powers had been extinguished. A heavy silence hung in the air, pregnant with unspoken implications, before the ominous words and other words appeared, promising a grim revelation. With an intense gaze and glowing chains emanating from his hand, the dark-haired man revealed a hidden power to seal a returnee's abilities. Stunned, the bandaged young man realized the source of this unprecedented power resided within the very chains themselves. A hand, partially obscured by a dark sleeve pattern with glowing green chains, gestured dismissively as a voice scoffed that mindless action wasn't enough. The voice continued, now laced with a knowing tone, emphasizing the importance of strategy and self-awareness. The bandaged athlete, sweat dripping, declared with conviction what true effort meant, leaving his observers stunned and questioning his identity. Chai Ji-young, a hunter and professor at Sungin Special Abilities Academy, introduced himself with a confident smirk. He revealed his dual roles, a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. His declaration of presence hinted at an important purpose for his arrival. The young man with the bandaged face looked up, stunned, as the words "to recruit you" hung in the air. The bandaged young man, his eyes wide with surprise, stammered a confused sorry. Someone off-panel called out a name, likely Sungin, leaving him even more bewildered. The bandaged man expressed his concern about failing the admission test to the dark-haired man, holding a package. The dark-haired man brushed off the bandaged man's worry with a sly smile. He cryptically hinted at having the power to influence admissions. A scarred man with dark hair, a predatory grin, deemed the blue-haired, bandaged individual's abilities sufficient. He leaned back, shifting the decision's weight onto the younger man. The offer hung heavy in the air, a gruff invitation to join their ranks. The bandaged, blue-haired young man declared his fervent desire to go somewhere important. His next words, filled with determination, revealed his ambition. He wanted to join the Hunter Academy. A dark-haired individual, sporting intriguing scars on his face, responded with a knowing and almost predatory grin. With a curt "very well," a thick envelope was offered, bearing the weighty inscription, "Welcome to the Hunter Academy." A hand reached out, fingers extended, about to claim the invitation to a world of untold possibilities. A golden disc hurtled through the air, spinning with menacing speed. The dark-haired figure's eyes narrowed, a flicker of intensity igniting within them as they watched the disc's trajectory. With a surge of power, a man in a dark suit intercepted the disc, wielding a large, glowing, angular weapon. his expression grim and determined. The bandaged young man, startled, stared in disbelief. As a figure emerged, bathed in an eerie crimson glow, a stern voice demanded answers from Chai Ji-young, whose face was etched with apprehension. A man in a dark suit, his face twisted in suspicion, glared upwards, demanding to know what devious plot was unfolding before him. Clutching a package, the dark-haired man let out a strained cough, a wry smile playing on his lips as he questioned if the situation wasn't somewhat reversed. Amidst a tense standoff, a bandaged man demanded answers from Chai Ji-young, who stood with the mysterious package, flanked by a figure in a mask. A surge of raw fury erupted from another, his face contorted in a wrathful grimace as he seemed to react to the unfolding scene. The bandaged man's eyes widened in disbelief, a mixture of confusion and outrage twisting his features as he questioned the reality before him. Amidst a clash of vibrant blue and crimson auras, the long-haired man greeted the other with a deceptively casual "long time no see," a sly smile playing on his lips. The recipient of this greeting, a sharper dressed figure bathed in red, retorted with a thinly veiled jab about the other's apparent aging. A melancholic figure, bathed in cool hues, suggested attending reunions more often, lest their face be forgotten. A sudden shift in tone and color, as a furious face, illuminated by fiery reds, loomed large. The enraged figure, their features taut with anger, demanded to know the real meaning behind the previous comment. A sly grin spread across the dark-haired man's face as he gestured subtly, a silent question hanging in the air about the connection between two individuals. Confused, the bandaged man questioned the meaning behind the gesture. With a casual shrug, the first man revealed he'd simply sent two recommendation letters, dismissing any deeper implications. Ji So-yeon, a returnee with an S-rank ability, stood back-to-back with Ji Seung-yeon, whose power was described as unprecedented. Both seemingly braced for an impending challenge amidst swirling energy and spectral chains. A stern-faced man in a suit vehemently refused something. He stressed that So-yeon was practically still a child and wouldn't be suited for such a demanding academy. Seizing on a timely remark about an adjustment, the dark-clad man's face twisted with a sharp intensity, his gesture emphasizing the importance of the topic. He leaned in, his expression suggesting a shared secret, as he questioned his companion about the rumor. A woman with pink hair, her face contorted in a scream, was consumed by a terrifying surge of power, her eyes glowing with an unnerving light as dark tendrils of energy crackled around her. The dark-haired man watched, his expression grim and jaw-clenched, realizing the imminent danger of her uncontrolled, escalating abilities. A woman, seen from behind, listened with apparent unease as a sharply dressed man insisted that he was perfectly capable of training her. Despite the woman's belief that a proper school with experts would be better suited for the task, a dark-haired man's shadowed face, etched with a mixture of exasperation and something harder to read, reflected his inner monologue about someone's stubbornness, hidden in the shadows. A dark-haired man held the injured, blue-haired youth close, bitterly dismissing his perceived lack of talent. The sharply dressed man, his face grim, implied that they both knew the inevitable outcome. He declared that reckless determination only leads to death, his words hanging heavy in the air. The younger man, sweat beading on his brow and a bandage around his head, stared in stunned silence, the weight of the statement clearly impacting him. Someone vehemently disagreed, their eyes flashing with conviction. Another character calmly insisted they had witnessed the event firsthand. The first, pointing to a bandaged man, described a heroic act of self-sacrifice to protect his sister. With a pointed gesture and a challenging glint in his eye, the suited man asserted the bravery of someone, seemingly a hunter, demanding agreement from the dark-haired individual before him. A stern face, etched with disapproval, scoffed that Ji-young's actions weren't bravery, but reckless boldness. A question hung heavy in the air, posed to a bandaged figure and his companion. Did he truly understand his sister's power? The interrogation continued, pressing for certainty about his plan to subdue her during his impulsive charge. The bandaged young man stammered, insisting that his intervention had been crucial. A darker-haired man countered, accusing him of fixating on the outcome and downplaying the role of luck. He pressed further, asserting the young man's success was merely a fortunate coincidence due to his inherent abilities. Sweat beaded on the bandaged fighter's face as he was accused of recklessly relying on luck in every battle. His expression hardened, a flicker of defiance mixed with a touch of fear in his eyes, as the chilling warning hung in the air that his supposed strategy was a sure path to death. A shocked silence followed, punctuated only by his sharp, wordless intake of breath. The man with the bandaged head listened as the other, adjusting his coat, harshly accused Chai Ji-young of manipulating him due to his naivety. He continued, his tone blunt and dismissive, warning that a recommendation wouldn't guarantee any special treatment. Finally, he delivered a crushing blow, predicting that even if he got into the academy, the fierce competition would leave him utterly defeated. Someone pointed out that the school favors recommended students. Infuriated, the bandaged student threatened to report the perceived injustice to the dean. With a sarcastic tone, the other person encouraged them to go ahead and deliver their greetings. A silent question, why, hung heavy in the air. The bandaged man's actions sparked confusion and concern, prompting a desperate plea for understanding. A yearning whisper escaped, just once. Filled with a mixture of hope and despair, the young man, his back turned and a bandage wrapped around his head, yearned for a simple acknowledgement of his heroic deed. A curt statement confirmed his rescue of his older sister, but left him craving a more heartfelt praise. He silently fumed, wondering why a sincere compliment was so difficult to obtain. A figure, seemingly lost and alone, lamented their isolation, fists clenched in frustration. Their hands trembled as they gripped their white clothing, a silent struggle playing out against the fabric. The dark-haired individual's eyes widened, reflecting a sudden shock or realization. The dark-haired man offered a sly, almost mocking, congratulations to the bandaged youth. Sung-Yun's expression hardened, a flicker of unease in his eyes as he shifted his gaze towards a sharply dressed man observing them. The dark-haired man, a sly grin playing on his lips, teased the bandaged youth about a professor's recognition, suggesting it brought him closer to his aspiration. Confused, the blue-haired young man quickly denied the implication, about to offer an explanation. He hesitated, a heavy but hanging in the air, his expression troubled. A gruff voice advised against overthinking, urging the blue-haired, bandaged youth to trust his instincts. With a look of conflicted determination, the young man stared ahead, a stark contrast to the stern profile of the darker-haired figure looming behind him. With a quiet reassurance, one man expressed his unwavering faith in the other's chosen path. Their hands clasped, a silent promise passing between them regardless of the road ahead. A hand reached out desperately as if grasping for a lost connection. With the poignant words, even the one you've walked all this time, hanging heavy in the air, a man with a bandage on his cheek gestured emphatically, seemingly mid-conversation. He declared fiercely that validation from others wasn't necessary. With a hardened expression, the dark-haired man emphasized his point to a bandaged companion. Tension crackled in the air as one man leaned in, his words a sharp warning about the danger of anonymity. The suited figure absorbed the intense statement, his expression shifting to grim understanding. A dark-haired man, clad in black, finally understood another's relentless pursuit of the hunter's life. A menacing, glowing red eye filled the next panel, the voice behind it accusingly whispering, "It was you?" Amidst a furious red backdrop, one man accused another of giving someone false hope. Gripped by a torrent of emotions, the accused recoiled, a pained expression twisting his features. He turned away sharply, his clenched fist trembling with barely contained rage. A young man recoiled, shielding his face as another, clad in dark attire, loomed over him, a third figure watching intently. The man in the foreground, his expression unreadable, seemed to contemplate the situation. A quiet thanks, Hyung, escaped his lips, tinged with an ambiguous mix of gratitude and something else entirely. The bandaged man, his face partially obscured by his hand, expressed his gratitude to the concerned, dark-haired man beside him, relieved to have regained his clarity of mind. He then muttered something about the beginning, confirming it with a strained yeah. His hands clenched together as if wrestling with a difficult memory. A sharply dressed man stared intently at a projected image of a group, seemingly a powerful team or gang, led by a figure resembling himself, but older and more imposing. His initial motivation echoing in his mind, a simple desire to follow in his father's footsteps. He paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as he considered the weight of that ambition. Driven by a desperate need for validation, the man in the lab coat yearned to prove himself and emerge victorious. He now realized the shallowness of his past ambitions, his thoughts once consumed by such trivial desires. Something shifted. Something felt different that day at the hospital. With a fierce grimace and outstretched hand, amidst a surge of reddish energy, the hooded figure lunged forward. At that pivotal moment, a profound change began within them. A wounded young man, face bruised, walked away from a smaller, seated figure, his gait suggesting a deliberate detachment. The smaller figure watched him leave, a mixture of awe and concern in his gaze. With a surge of conviction, the walking figure declared his own strength and resilience in that very moment. With a hardened gaze and a bandage clinging to his cheek, he declared his readiness, a steely resolve etched onto his features. With a fierce roar and bandages wrapped around his head, the blue-haired young man declared his unwavering resolve to become a hunter, even if it meant confronting the dark-haired man before him. The latter, clad in black, absorbed the challenge with a grim, contemplative expression. A storm of emotions brewing behind his seemingly impassive gaze. A sinister glint flickered in his eye, a chilling confirmation of his dark suspicions. A menacing hand gestured, accompanied by a chilling threat that words alone couldn't convey the gravity of the situation. The bandaged man recoiled, his face a mask of shock and fear as the implication of the threat sunk in. He gasped, speechless in the face of the impending danger. A hand gripped his shoulder, the tension palpable. The dark-haired man, his face etched with a grim determination, held the blue-haired, bandaged figure close, staring them with a low, dangerous "Go ahead, try." The bandaged young man's eyes widened with a mixture of apprehension and confusion as he faced someone unseen. A stark white panel emphasized the silence and tension. A stern-faced man, clad in a dark uniform with a distinct insignia, leaned in, his words a cryptic warning that the bandaged youth would soon discover his path was wrong. A shadowy figure declared they had to conditions. The injured young man with a bandage on his cheek was instructed to join the student council. He echoed the words, "student council," with a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. A harsh ultimatum hung in the air: prove yourself in a year, or be dragged back home. The dark-haired man, caught between a skeptical companion and the weight of the challenge, seemed tense. The man with the headphones reacted with an exclamation of surprise, finding the demand rather excessive. A curt and sharp "shut up" cut through the tension, directed at the man with the headphones, ending the conversation abruptly. A stern-faced man in a dark suit gripped the shoulder of a younger, athletic man with bright blue hair, his voice heavy with a command to protect his sister. The younger man, visibly shaken, stammered out a question about his older sister, his voice laced with anxiety. With a sigh, the older man conceded that the girl's unstable powers necessitated her being sent to the academy, alongside the other, seemingly unimpressed figure. A stern warning hung in the air, demanding academic success from someone unseen, with a chilling threat of forced return should they fail, echoing a past incident. The man with the shadowed face, his expression hinting at a ruthless resolve, delivered the ultimatum. His face, marred by a bandage and streaked with sweat, contorted with fierce determination as he challenged someone with a desperate plea. A stammered affirmation, tinged with both fear and resolve, was the hesitant response. A sharply dressed man walked away down a hallway, leaving to others one with a bandaged head to watch him go. A door slammed shut, echoing in the hallway and jolting the bandaged man and his companions. The bandaged young man, his breath still shaky, wondered if the danger had truly passed. The fear of imminent death still clinging to him. A lone figure, in a suit, walked down a warmly lit street, his back to the viewer, seemingly lost in thought. Suddenly, a voice called out, startling another man, whose face was partially visible as he turned towards the sound, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. One person questioned another's judgment, wondering if they'd overstepped by suggesting someone join the student council. The retort highlighted the council's prestigious nature, composed entirely of top students. With a frustrated gesture, the long-haired man argued that it would be impossible for a low-ranking student, especially a freshman, to handle such a demanding role. With a hint of challenge in their thoughts, someone mused that since he'd boasted about becoming a hunter, he should at least be capable of this small feat, turning away slightly. Another figure gestured dismissively with a sarcastic sigh, clearly exasperated by the other's over-the-top pronouncements. Ji Young's name was uttered with a strained urgency, drawing his attention. He hesitated, his expression shadowed with unspoken regret as he confessed he never meant to involve anyone in his dangerous affairs. A screen displayed a group of people in various attire, seemingly a teen with the overlaid confession, "But at first, I just wanted to be like Dad." The focus shifted to a man's profile, his expression unreadable as he seemingly recalled the sentiment, bathed in a warm, perhaps nostalgic light. Sweat beaded on the scarred face of the person as they registered something shocking. A grim-faced man, seemingly in deep thought, looked away from the camera. Guilt washed over the first person as they realized they'd pulled the other into a difficult situation, watching his retreating back against a backdrop of blurred city lights. A girl with long dark hair sat quietly on her bed, seemingly lost in thought as she read a small book. Her anticipation was palpable as she beamed, holding a letter of recommendation for the Sungin Special Abilities Academy. As February drew to a close, a new chapter filled with possibilities unfolded before her. The blue-haired man, seen in profile against a blurry cityscape, seemed to be contemplating something just out of frame, a hint of anticipation in his expression. March arrived, heralding an unforeseen shift in the narrative. A colossal cruise ship dominated the horizon, dwarfed a crowd of onlookers waving excitedly as it prepared to embark. Aboard the Hunter Academy passenger ship, a blue-haired girl beamed with excitement, her pink suitcase in tow, while the dark-haired boy beside her looked on with a more reserved, almost apprehensive expression. The ship departed, carrying them towards their uncertain future. The young man, face contorted with fear and disbelief, choked out an accusation, convinced he was being deceived. A woman shielded a small boy amidst the chaos of a devastated landscape, her face etched with grim determination as she cried out a desperate warning. A lone figure soared through the air amidst a swirling vortex of light and destruction. Below, two figures, seemingly a young man and woman, watched the ascending form amidst a ravaged landscape. Suddenly, a sharply dressed man with swept-back hair pointed directly at the reader, declaring them a hunter, a book glowing ominously in his other hand. Eyes wide with terror and mouth agape in a primal scream, the young man raged against some unseen horror, declaring that no true hunter would behave in such a way. The spiky-haired young man jolted awake, his eyes wide with shock and a sheen of sweat on his face. He abruptly sat up in bed, the blanket sliding down, a gasp escaping his lips. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, his expression still etched with alarm. A bespectacled young man peered down from the top bunk, a worried crease on his brow, asking if his bunkmate was all right. Concerned, he explained he'd heard groaning coming from the lower bunk and wondered if seasickness was the culprit. The other, with tousled lavender hair and a dark tank top, rubbed his head, admitting to a bad sleeping habit rather than any ailment. The silver-haired student, casually touching his head, deduced that the other must be new, having never seen their face before. Beaming, the bespectacled student introduced himself as Sion Purium, a second year, extending a welcoming hand and suggesting they become friends. With a playful grin, the silver-haired young man, clad in a black tank top, introduced himself as Seal Subin, his hand clasped in another's. A pleasant nice to meet you echoed, as the scene shifted to a vibrant vista of a cruise ship slicing through azure waters, leaving a frothy white trail in its wake. A case opened, revealing an intriguing assortment of knives, medical supplies, and other peculiar items. The blue-haired young man, noticing the girl's curiosity about the unusual contents, casually revealed he'd borrowed a few helpful tools from his father's drawer. A frantic voice worriedly questioned if something had been stolen, a flashback showing a dark-haired boy pocketing something while a girl with long, dark blue hair looked on in surprise. Disbelief dripped from the unseen speaker's next words, questioning the boy's character with a hint of defensiveness. The blue-haired girl, now in the foreground, nervously clasped her hands, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face as doubt crept into her own belief in the boy's innocence. With a look of barely concealed anxiety, the teal-haired young man quickly excused himself, claiming a need to investigate something. The blue-haired girl briskly walked away, seemingly ignoring the boy's worried call to stay together. He frantically rummaged through a case, a desperate expression etched on his face as he realized she was leaving. With a quiet intensity, the girl muttered room 105, "I won't forget," a hint of determination flashing in her eyes. The blue-haired individual expressed anxious concern, their voice laced with worry about someone's safety. Reassurance followed with a promise to stay connected. Alone now, the speaker sighed, their expression shifting to weary exasperation, feeling the burden of responsibility. The blue-haired young man's gaze held a serious weight, a hint of determination. In his eyes, a heavy thought hung in the air. What they did next was of vital importance. He turned towards a window, his back to the viewer, contemplating the vast, cloud-filled sky where a flock of birds soared freely, acknowledging the importance of something unseen. The blonde-haired figure leaned against a railing, their gaze lost in the vast expanse of the sky dotted with soaring birds. A subtle smile played on their lips as they mused that the upcoming school term promised a whirlwind of fresh faces and experiences. Leaning against the railing of what seemed to be a ship's deck, the blonde young man mused that befriending the right new students would greatly simplify his school life. He calculated further that these friendships would eventually blossom into valuable connections. With a sharp butt and a shadowed gaze, the blonde individual dismissed the previous notion, their fingers laced together thoughtfully, muttering about it being rookie thinking. Sion Purum's intense gaze bore into someone, their widened eye reflecting a mixture of shock and determination, as a challenging voice declared them a mere rookie. Under a brilliant blue sky, the bespectacled young man leaned forward, demanding clarification from his silver-haired companion who casually held a drink. The blonde, earring-wearing upperclassman pondered the pros and cons of befriending the new students. A thoughtful frown etched on his face, the long-haired figure leaned in, their expression a mixture of demand and amusement, as they instructed someone to bring a pretty female student next time. Overhearing this, the shorter-haired person grimaced, internally cursing the other's womanizing tendencies. Someone suggested finding a date this semester. The bespectacled Jian Wujin clutching a can, was berated for still being single in his second year. With a shrug and a resigned air, Woojin accepted his fate as a loser. An unseen observer chuckled at the exchange. With a touch of annoyance, the blonde-haired individual retorted that they should find someone else for the task. Claiming to have been busy scouting, a blonde individual observed a scene unfolding on a ship's deck, a curious hum escaping their lips. A girl tossed food into the air, calling out to the circling seagulls. The blue-haired girl, munching on snacks, wondered aloud why someone was avoiding her. A hint of playful annoyance in her voice. Suddenly, startled, she clutched the snack bag to her chest. The blonde-haired individual swiftly offered a snack to the surprised blue-haired girl. He presented the treat with a simple "here." Awestruck, the girl's eyes sparkled as she softly exclaimed, "Wow," at the offered gift. The blue-haired girl, clutching a bag of snacks, offered a sweet thank you. Her apparent sincerity was met with a shocked, almost disbelieving stare from a blonde individual, veins bulging around their wide eye. The blue-haired girl seemed intrigued by the mention of a seagull. Her confusion was evident as she asked for clarification. A hand holding a breadstick appeared, its owner implying that the snack wasn't meant for any bird. A blonde man with a cigarette dangling from his lips exhaled a plume of smoke, a sly smirk playing on his face as he realized something unexpected had been drawn to their location. Startled, a girl with long dark hair, clutching a red object, blurted out yes. A blonde individual, seemingly amused, inquired about the other's status as a new student in their department. The white-haired young man was asked if everything was going well, but his companion, shielding his eyes, admitted he couldn't see clearly, observing a girl with dark blue hair who seemed to be staying put. The bespectacled one remarked that things might be progressing better than before, focusing on the girl who appeared startled, perhaps even a little frozen. The white-haired youth voiced his doubt about her ability to escape. The white-haired youth questioned his bespectacled friend about an older student, seemingly confused about his year level. The friend casually explained that while the older student, Woojin, had technically entered the previous year, he was currently a freshman just like them. Reacting with sudden understanding and alarm, the white-haired youth blurted out a worried question about Woojin failing the previous year. Seong-han's merciless reputation regarding failing grades preceded him. Apparently, quite a few students have failed in the current batch. Someone observed that some of those who failed had even resorted to paying a hefty fee to re-enroll on a luxurious deck filled with seemingly affluent individuals. One character observed the apparent wealth surrounding them. Another character, speaking to a bespectacled companion casually sipping a drink, highlighted the potential of Seong-han's graduation certificate to guarantee lifelong employment. The bespectacled individual responded with a nonchalant acceptance of such privileged existences, with a mysterious air and a book clutched in one hand. The suited figure began, well, honestly, as if about to reveal a long-held secret. The silver-haired young man, clutching a can, mused aloud about the seemingly lax qualifications required to become a hunter. His expression a mixture of skepticism and amusement. A pair of bespectacled eyes widened in surprise, a soft O escaping their owner's lips. Intrigue sparked as the observer wondered where the departing duo, one with vibrant blonde hair and a mischievous grin, the other with long, dark hair, were headed. A suggestion was made to follow a pair of figures, and it was readily agreed to. Room 105 awaited. The blue-haired young man, lounging on his bed with a book in hand and earbuds dangling, looked up in startled confusion. A sharp what? Escaping his lips. The blue-haired person groaned, seemingly struggling to speak, while the girl with long dark hair looked on with a mixture of surprise and concern, and the blonde young man in the background appeared stoic. A distressed blonde-haired individual dramatically declared they were being harassed by a strange person, gesturing towards another figure in the room, while a blue-haired person looked on with a mix of alarm and annoyance. Suddenly, the accuser's face morphed into an expression of utter shock, their features mirroring those of another nearby figure, both seemingly startled by a shared, unseen presence. The blue-haired man casually inquired if she had a boyfriend, his gaze drifting slightly. Then, with a sudden shift in demeanor, he initiated a handshake, his touch lingering a beat too long, leaving her feeling strangely uneasy. The silver-haired man questioned if they had entered the room, receiving an affirmative nod from his companion. Suddenly, the door burst open, sending someone tumbling out and sprawling on the floor in front of the startled onlookers. Startled, the blonde youth recoiled, only to be met with a calming yet firm gesture and an offer of dialogue from the dark-haired individual. The blue-haired man leaned in aggressively, his words laced with venom, while a startled man in glasses frantically waved his hands, urging him to stop. Someone yelled desperately for them to cease the escalating conflict. A silver-haired individual, seemingly Woojin, entered the scene with a weary expression, questioning Woojin's latest transgression. Woojin, with an innocent air, denied any wrongdoing, pleading his case to Purium. Astonishment filled the air, as someone realized a girl had just awakened after 12 long years. The shocking revelation that she was practically still a child sparked a furious outburst, demanding an apology from another, seemingly culpable, individual. A choked apology was offered in response to the aggression. In a spacious room, someone apologized profusely for a sudden, unexplained outburst, leaving the others slightly bewildered. A quiet apology hung in the air as the blue-haired girl looked down, seemingly embarrassed. Then, casually changing the subject, someone mentioned Sungyun's age, noting that he was the same age as Subin, the dark-haired boy seated beside him, drawing a simple awe from the white-haired listener. The silver-haired youth offered a friendly greeting, introducing himself as Sol Subin with a disarming smile. Observing him, the dark-haired young man with glasses echoed the sentiment, suggesting they try to get along, his expression a mixture of curiosity and slight apprehension. A group of young people, seemingly students, walked down a school hallway. Someone with glasses inquired if Seung-yeon was indeed in the hunter department. A young man, presumably Seung-yeon, confirmed with a slightly hesitant yes, while a girl beside him looked on with concern. Someone asked the bespectacled young man if he had a favorite hunter. He casually dismissed the question, admitting a slight bias due to his father's profession. Intrigued, the other person's interest was piqued, focusing on the unexpected revelation about his father. The silver-haired man's eyes widened, a sudden realization dawning as he questioned the other about his last name. A hopeful exclamation hung in the air, a beat of anticipation before the question. His expression turned serious, almost shadowed, as he inquired about a hunter named Ji Shinbeek. A figure, seemingly radiating power, extended a hand forward, their face obscured by radiating lines of energy. A voice confirmed something unseen with a simple "I do," their tone hinting at a weighty decision. The blue-haired young man, his expression a mixture of apprehension and resolve, revealed a startling truth. The powerful figure was his father. Stunned, the white-haired individual questioned the news he'd just heard. Overwhelmed with disbelief, another person demanded confirmation of the shocking revelation, their voice filled with urgency. A blonde-haired figure, equally astonished, echoed the sentiment, their eyes wide with surprise. The white-haired man, face flushed with excitement, breathed out a starstruck confession of admiration for someone unseen. Another voice, or perhaps multiple voices, eagerly echoed the sentiment. Amidst a desolate, crumbling backdrop, a woman with light hair, her face etched with fear and wide-eyed alarm, leaned against a man, her expression hinting at desperate urgency. A sharply dressed man, his face etched with grim determination, held a mystical-looking book, a strange energy radiating from him. The silver-haired young man, a pendant dangling from his neck, stared wide-eyed, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. The dark-haired boy, surrounded by curious faces and outstretched hands, looked on with a mixture of annoyance and apprehension, his own brow damp with perspiration. A large, white ship cut through the azure waves, its wake a frothy spectacle. With a wistful smile, the bespectacled young man confessed his childhood dream of becoming a hunter, echoing the sentiment expressed moments before about someone's father being a role model. A blue-haired girl seemed surprised to learn her dark-haired companion wasn't in the hunter department. He clarified his position in the magical engineering department, his low E rank hindering any hunter aspiration elsewhere. A tense discussion unfolded between a group, a blonde individual holding a device while two others looked on, one concernedly touching their head, debating the appropriate use of an item. The dark-haired young man, seemingly resigned, muttered about his own F-rank status, deciding to remain still. A curious escaped the blue-haired girl, focused on her handheld game, before a playful no left her lips. Her expression brightened as she excitedly shared the news of her brother's unexpected acceptance into the hunter department, despite his F-rank. The white-haired man, the blonde woman, and the bespectacled man all registered shock on their faces. The blue-haired man below them reacted with an incredulous, almost pained yell, stunned. The bespectacled man and the blue-haired woman gaped in disbelief as they processed shocking news. The dark-haired man, sweat beading on his brow, stammered a nervous denial. He quickly tried to change the subject, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden outburst of incredulity. The blue-haired girl, gamepad still clutched in her hand, beamed with surprise and joy as a hand ruffled her hair, the news of their acceptance bringing a flush of excitement to her cheeks. The blue-haired girl's eyes swirled as someone roughly gripped her head, a pain groan escaping her lips. A frustrated voice echoed a previous warning about revealing a secret recommendation, as a girl with blue hair frantically apologized, recoiling from a scolding. Two onlookers observed the tense scene, one nervously, commenting on the reprimand. Suddenly, a voice called out Hyung, startling the bespectacled observer. A young man with messy dark hair reassured someone, perhaps a younger sibling or friend, that even with a low E rank, hard work could lead to becoming a hunter. He added with a touch of self-deprecation that he, surprisingly, had managed to land himself in the hunter department. A bespectacled young man with a gentle smile listened thoughtfully, his silence hinting at a deeper contemplation. With a curt right, thanks, the white-haired man steepled his fingers, a thoughtful and perhaps calculating glint in his eyes. A cruise ship cut through the azure waves, leaving a foamy trail in its wake. The bespectacled young man leaned in, guiding the blue-haired girl's hand on a handheld device, her face lighting up with understanding. On the deck, a blond man with a mischievous glint in his eyes greeted to women, his gesture suggesting a shared joke or secret. A lone figure in dark casual wear walked across the deck of a ship, seemingly lost in thought amidst the bustling crowd. The blue-haired young man, his expression a mixture of apathy and restlessness, muttered to himself about the crushing boredom. Suddenly, a flicker of interest sparked in his eyes as he noticed a silver-haired individual leaning against the railing, gazing out at the vast ocean. On the deck of a ship, a dark-haired young man noticed something was off with his white-haired companion and asked if he was feeling seasick. Turning away to look out at the vast ocean, the other quietly confirmed his unease. A seagull soared through the vibrant blue sky. Another gull landed gracefully on the railing, wings outstretched, between the figures, seemingly absorbed in their own worlds. One was silver hair gazing out at the ocean, the other, dark-haired, engrossed in his phone. A young man with dark blue hair, holding a phone, looked up thoughtfully as he was asked about his aspiration to become a hunter. He paused, a contemplative awe escaping his lips as he turned slightly away. Another figure partially visible in the background. Just as he began to explain, mentioning his father, the other person interrupted him, clarifying their question. The scarred young man with dark hair was questioned about his beliefs, his very mindset, which seemed to take him by surprise. The blue-haired youth, seemingly deep in thought, scratched his head, admitting his uncertainty. A contemplative silence hung in the air as another, with striking white hair, turned away, a revelation dawning upon him. Something previously unconsidered now held his full attention. He paused, speechless, the weight of the unspoken hanging heavy. The news often highlighted the influx of people taking up the hunter profession with a carefree attitude, against a backdrop of a large white bird and a bright blue sky. A dark-haired young man with a serious expression seemed to ponder this trend. The scene shifted, darkening as the narration continued, hinting at a less noble motivation for some, the allure of easy money and fame. The final thought lingered, heavy with the unspoken implications of such shallow aspiration. Under a clear sky, a young man with dark, tousled hair, casually dressed, held a phone, a thoughtful expression flickering across his face as someone nearby started a conversation with a pensive well. He grimly confirmed the existence of a certain type of hunter, his tone hinting at disapproval or perhaps a touch of resignation. A shadowed figure spoke with conviction, their words hinting at the hidden burdens that come with the privileges of becoming a hunter. He exhaled sharply, a plume of breath escaping into the crisp air, the weight of unspoken responsibilities hanging heavy in the atmosphere. The unseen speaker continued, their voice low, emphasizing the heavy price of power. With a look of disdain and a slight scar marring his face, the blue-haired young man muttered his resentment for hunters. He trailed off, his gaze distant and filled with a simmering anger. The blue-haired man, leaning against the railing of a boat, questioned the white-haired man about his motivation for becoming a hunter. A beat of silence hung in the air as the white-haired man looked away, a large bird perched on the railing between them. He shifted, the bird now resting comfortably on his arm, and declared his noble aspiration to be a hunter who saves everyone. The dark-haired young man glanced at his phone, a thoughtful escaping his lips. He paused, then declared with a sense of finality that this observation led him to a crucial point, overlooking the vast ocean. A warning was issued. Don't come to the academy. The blue-haired young man, phone clutched in his hand, seemed to ponder the ominous message as feathers drifted around him. A white-haired figure, feathers drifting from their form, turned sharply, a questioning what escaping their lips. As they faced a dark-haired youth, gripping a railing overlooking the vast ocean, someone pondered aloud if hard work could overcome a low E-rank status. The final thought hung heavy in the air. The awakening of abilities in ordinary individuals was attributed to nothing but pure luck. The silver-haired young man, casually leaning against the railing of a ship, declared with chilling certainty that an established rank remains forever fixed. The scarred young man, with teal hair and a dark shirt, listened intently as the exorbitant tuition fees and prestigious family background requirements of the academy were laid out. His expression a mix of apprehension and determination. A sharply dressed man, face contorted with barely contained anger, seemed to address someone unseen. His words laced with disdain. The white-haired man, turning away, muttered bitterly about the privilege of having a wealthy father. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features, as he retorted that his conversational partner had a rather unpleasant manner of speaking. He revealed a hint of defensiveness in his tone, that his late-blooming abilities were the reason he found himself in this current predicament. With a steely gaze and a hint of defiance, the white-haired young man declared that awakening abilities had nothing to do with hard work. The white-haired figure loomed, their words hinting at a newfound power the dark-haired person possessed. The dark-haired individual pondered the revelation, their expression a mix of surprise and curiosity, as a vision of a pink-haired girl unfolded. Empowered and resolute, a figure wielding a glowing sword emerged amidst swirling crimson energy, facing the pink-haired girl in a charged confrontation. The spiky-haired figure was reminded of their unique ability, the very reason they received a coveted recommendation to this exclusive place. Their focus shifted to their feet, planted firmly on the deck of a ship, alongside fellow Hunter Department students. A silent acknowledgement of their shared path, the spiky-haired figure leaned back, attributing their success to mere luck. A dismissive air about him as he looked down at the other. The blue-haired man's expression shifted to one of quiet contemplation, his words echoing the sentiment that aspiring to be a hunter required acknowledging a fundamental, unspoken truth. The white-haired man spoke with conviction, assuring someone that hard work guarantees success. His expression hardened as he addressed someone who had abandoned their dreams after receiving a low rank. A dark, dramatic backdrop emphasized his biting accusation. The man was bluffing about achieving his goals through hard work. Under a somber, rain-streaked sky, a dark-haired young man placed a reassuring hand on the head of a blue-haired girl, his gaze intense as he offered words of encouragement, promising her that even the lowest rank wouldn't hold her back from becoming a hunter if she worked hard enough. Enraged, the dark-haired young man lashed out, his face contorted in a furious grimace, as he was told his mental age was the same as his sister's. A fist connected with the jaw of the white-haired man, a guttural "you bastard," echoing the violent impact. Forceful blow connected, sending a spray of something, perhaps water, perhaps something more ethereal, exploding outward as the dark-haired man struck the pale-haired one. His expression twisted with a grimace of pain or perhaps effort, the impact clearly affecting him as much as his target. Startled, the blue-haired girl reacted to his sudden noise, clutching a device and looking at the bespectacled boy beside her. Someone cried out in alarm as a figure collapsed on the deck. The white-haired young man, wearing a necklace, offered a nonchalant, almost amused, reassurance about the fallen person. The dark-haired young man, seemingly mid-fall, looked bewildered, muttering about his brother's clumsiness. He wondered aloud what had just transpired. Just as his fist was about to connect with his light-haired target, something materialized between them. His momentum shifted, his trajectory altered by the sudden appearance. The silver-haired man, his expression a mix of disdain and frustration, accused the other of being the kind of person who resorts to violence first. The dark-haired man, face contorted in a grimace of barely suppressed anger, listened as the accusation turned into a condemnation, his actions deemed a disgrace to their profession. Under a bright sky, a stern voice advised the dark-haired figure to abandon their hunter aspiration. The white-haired young man, seemingly caught off guard, noticed a glowing chain materialize around his ankles. The blue-haired girl reacted with wide-eyed shock, clutching something small, as the bespectacled boy beside her looked on with a similar expression of surprise. Annoyed, the boy exclaimed in disbelief, while another girl calmly inquired about something on the ground. Kneeling with a grimace, a white-haired man seemed to struggle with whatever he found there. With a frustrated edge, a dark-haired man insisted his presence was merely a stroke of luck. He confessed, his voice laced with self-doubt, that he didn't deserve the title of hunter. A sharp, almost mocking sure came from the silver-haired man. He faced a dangerous glint in his golden eyes. The first speaker repeated his claim of lucky circumstance, his tone now carrying a touch of defiance under the other's intense gaze. With a determined glint in his eye, the dark-haired young man declared that since he was already present, he deserved a chance to prove himself as a hunter. The blue-haired figure stood over a defeated opponent, sprawled on the floor, vowing to remain at the academy no matter the cost. Observing the scene, another individual mused darkly that the fallen one's low rank would make survival difficult, even if they stayed. A challenge was issued, a test proposed. With a furious intensity, a demand echoed through the darkness, a midnight rendezvous. His voice, strained with anticipation, urged them to unleash their full power. A scarred face, framed by messy white hair, looked up with a cunning glint in golden eyes. A predatory smirk twisting his lips. A large ship plowed through the stormy sea, rain lashing down. Darkness enveloped a young woman with dark hair, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. As she whispered a reassurance to herself, or perhaps to someone unseen, "It's okay." Bathed in ethereal light, a seemingly spectral figure clasped their hands together, radiating an otherworldly glow, vowing that something precious will never disappear. Then, as if echoing a fervent hope, a quiet certainty emerged someday. Something wonderful would surely happen. Tears streamed down the blue-haired girl's face as she lay in bed, her expression a mixture of shock and despair. Later, as rain lashed against the window pane, she lay tucked in, her blue hair barely visible against the covers, a contemplative quiet replacing her earlier distress. The blue-haired girl in pink pajamas stared out a rain-streaked window, a tear tracing a path down her cheek as she questioned if it had all been a dream. Her breath hitched as she whispered a name, Seung-yeon, a flicker of recognition, perhaps mingled with pain, in her widening eye. A hand rose to touch her face, a single tear clinging to her fingertip, reflecting the light like a tiny, fragile jewel. A lone figure, clad in pajamas, walked down a dimly lit hotel corridor, the faint glow of their phone screen illuminating their path. Anxiety etched on her face. The girl in pink pajamas whispered Seung-yeon's name, clutching her phone, her voice filled with worry and confusion as to his whereabouts. A figure called out, startling the blue-haired girl in pink pajamas, who recoiled with a scream. Startled by a sudden loud noise, a girl with short dark hair exclaimed in annoyance. Holding his phone's flashlight, the blonde-haired young man, seemingly unfazed, questioned the other two about their presence. Another girl, with long dark hair and a pink jacket, appeared, her phone illuminating her surprised face as she asked what everyone was doing. A group, illuminated by a phone's light, mentioned their plans to move their game to a different room. Noticing a newcomer standing nearby, recognizing the new student, the blonde-haired one extended an invitation to join them. Startled, the woman in pink pajamas expressed her surprise at being chosen. Someone inquired if it would be all right to bring Seung-yeon along. The person in light blue pajamas suggested it would be beneficial for everyone to get acquainted beforehand, since they would all be meeting at school anyway. A bright-eyed girl, clad in pajamas, beams at an unseen companion, eagerly accepting an invitation. Her excitement falters as a sudden realization dawns, a forgotten name echoing in her mind. A young man with a bandage on his head stood against a backdrop of heavy chains, his expression unreadable. A group of three, two young men and a woman, arrived at a doorway, the woman announcing their arrival with a casual air. A trio sat amidst a casual spread of snacks and drinks, one still chuckling over someone's amusingly disgruntled face. The pink-haired woman, now holding a cup, warmly welcomed newcomers, gesturing for them to join the relaxed gathering. The blond young man seemed startled, his eyes wide as he stood amongst a small group of people. He abruptly announced his departure to a girl nearby, surprising her with his sudden decision. Her startled hung in the air, a mix of confusion and disbelief coloring her features. The blonde, clearly agitated, confronted the other, demanding to know why the woman with short, dark hair was present, a fact they felt had been deliberately withheld. The blue-haired girl, clad in adorable pajamas, beamed at the sight of a room overflowing with treats. A blond young man, seemingly overwhelmed, anxiously wondered if he could partake in the feast as others around him indulged. Another, with glasses, shot him a pointed look, implying that he was responsible for bringing the enthusiastic snack lover to the scene. The pink-haired girl impatiently urged Woojin to sit down. A blonde-haired man chuckled, observing the scene unfold. With a sigh of mock surrender, someone sat down amidst the group. A curious glance fell upon the blue-haired girl, a silent question hanging in the air. The blonde man, his hand resting gently on the girl's head, introduced her as a new friend he'd grown close to. With a bright, cheerful hi and a wave, the blue-haired girl acknowledged the onlookers. The pink-haired girl smirked, a mischievous glint in her eyes, as if pondering a secret. A casual hi slipped from her lips, directed at someone off-panel, a hint of playful nonchalance in her tone. To figures, a girl with bright blue hair mid-bite and a bespectacled boy beside her reacted with stunned silence. The bespectacled young man stammered, suddenly remembering something important and asking the blue-haired girl about Seung-yeon's whereabouts. Confused, the girl shrugged, admitting she had no idea where he'd gone, having woken up to find him already missing. A flicker of worry crossed the bespectacled boy's face as he realized Subin was also absent from their room. A bespectacled young man observed a tense scene unfold between a standing figure and another crumpled on the floor. A sense of unease washing over him as he recalled a similar strange feeling from the past. Lost in thought, he wondered if there was something hidden between the two he'd just witnessed. The rain poured down, drumming against an umbrella held overhead. Lost in contemplation, under a downpour, the dark-haired figure with an umbrella seemed taken aback. A silent question hung in the air, his surprise evident. His gaze fixed on another figure, cloaked and hooded against the rain. A quiet recognition dawning on his face. On a rain-lashed basketball court, one figure stood with an umbrella, while another, clad in a raincoat, approached, prompting a sarcastic observation about the obvious nature of the garment. The umbrella holder scoffed, questioning the raincoat wearer's fighting attire as wholly unsuitable for the downpour. With a sharp, irritated tone, the figure in the raincoat retorted with a biting insult, pointing out the blatant obviousness of the rain. Under a downpour, one figure questioned another's use of an umbrella, pointing out its impracticality in an impending fight. The umbrella holder calmly retorted that he simply preferred to stay as dry as possible. A tense silence hung in the rain-soaked air as the two locked eyes, a silent challenge passing between them. In the pouring rain, a hooded figure stood calmly under an umbrella, seemingly oblivious to the seething anger radiating from the broad back of another, who questioned his sanity with a mix of disbelief and growing fury. Exhaling in relief, the hooded figure with pale hair conjured a swirling, aqua-tinged orb of energy. Startled, the dark-haired man reacted with a gasp, summoning a shimmering chain of energy around his fist. Under a torrential downpour, the hooded figure with pale hair, clutching a glowing, water-filled artifact, revealed their power over the spirit of water. Observing the heavy rain and the surrounding sea, the figure realized the advantageous location amplified their water spirit's strength. A dark-haired figure, marked with a glowing chain, watched on, seemingly aware of the growing power. The presence of water enhanced the spirit's might, creating a palpable tension in the rain-soaked air. Under a rain-swept sky, a hooded figure, with piercing golden eyes, confessed their struggle to contain immense power. A chilling warning hanging in the air, a grim realization dawned on their companion. The weight of the words "you could die" echoing in the downpour. A hand reached out from under a dark coat, seemingly letting go of an umbrella into the downpour. The blue-haired figure, gripping a glowing chain, turned sharply, a fierce glint in his eyes as he accused someone of starting the conflict. Resigned, the hooded figure with pale hair released a small glowing, water-filled square attached to a thin cord into the rainy sky. The square rapidly unfolded into a larger, star-shaped, shimmering construct, crackling with energy. Another figure, dark-haired and wielding a glowing chain, watched the sudden transformation with a confused expression. A torrent of swirling, icy energy erupted from the cloaked figure, hurtling towards their opponent. The dark-haired man's eyes widened, reflecting the approaching attack as if in slow motion, bracing for impact. He gritted his teeth as the icy blast struck him, sending shards of light exploding outwards. The hooded figure's eyes widened in sudden alarm, a silent exclamation hanging in the air. Another, with dark hair plastered to his forehead, gritted his teeth in a furious snarl, his face contorted with rage. A hand, emerging from the darkness, tightened its grip on a glowing spectral chain, ready to unleash its power. With a surge of power, the dark-haired figure unleashed a torrent of shimmering energy, scattering droplets like rain towards a cloaked individual below. A white-haired man, caught in the crossfire, watched the ethereal attack with a mixture of apprehension and awe. A figure with dark blue hair, seemingly caught in the midst of some supernatural event, watched as glowing, chain-like energy dispersed around them. Someone remarked, impressed, that for an F-rank, the display of power was remarkable. Under a downpour, the hooded figure observed a glowing, aquamarine, rectangular object cracking, admitting it was weaker than a real chain. Another figure, with dark, windswept hair and a look of dawning comprehension, realized the hooded figure possessed more than one spirit. Beneath the downpour, the hooded figure with vibrant blue hair was warned that their peculiar chain was useless. The strange, glowing, water-filled geometric shapes attached to the chain pulsed and shifted, defying the claim of their powerlessness. As if responding to an unseen command, the aquatic constructs warped and reshaped, their edges sharpening. With a menacing aura, the choice hung heavy in the air, attack or defend. His wide, bright eyes, filled with a mix of fear and determination, hinted at the difficult decision he faced. With a fierce grunt, the blue-haired figure lunged forward, their attack seemingly deflected. Dark-haired and determined, the other combatant summoned a swirling, ethereal energy in their outstretched hand, taunting their opponent. They questioned if that was the extent of their power as a glowing, Multifaceted gem pulse with an otherworldly light dot as shards of ice erupted. Around the hooded figure, a voice challenged their predictable attack. The cloaked figure, hair a startling shade of blue, posed a cryptic question, hinting at something unseen. He then revealed a perplexing truth. Despite the dramatic backdrop, he had not moved an inch. A sharp question hung in the air. "Do you get it now?" Followed by a chilling declaration. "You don't belong here," directed at the blue-haired figure standing amidst the downpour. Chains clattering around him in the rain-slicked street, his breath coming in ragged gasps, caught in the downpour. The blue-haired figure's face was a mask of disbelief, questioning if their opponent had even moved. A chilling revelation followed. The stillness had been deliberate, a strategic ploy unnoticed until now. With a sinister grin, the blue-haired figure, gripping a glowing chain, revealed their cunning advantage. Startled by a sudden glow of spectral chains materializing at his feet, the cloaked figure, drenched in the pouring rain, uttered a confused "what?" A shimmering, electrified chain snaked through the rain-soaked courtyard, catching the eye of a dark-haired youth, a grim premonition washing over his face. A young man with pale hair, his face contorted in a furious scream, spat a venomous curse at his unseen opponent. A burst of bright, sharp energy crackled through the air, aimed with deadly precision. The target, another individual with similarly pale hair and striking golden eyes, watched the attack with wide-eyed shock and a dawning horror. With a guttural cry and a flash of blue energy, the blue-haired fighter sent his opponent flying, his chain weapon whipping through the air. Rain lashed down as the silver-haired man roared in apparent agony, questioned about his repetitive strategy. With a grim, determined expression, the dark-haired man retorted that it was the only way he knew how to fight, his words dripping with venom. Sun's Special Abilities Academy introduces its diverse student body, starting with the cheerful, bespectacled, second-year Sion Purium. Below, the incoming freshman class showcases a range of personalities: the seemingly stoic Ji Seung-yeon, the bright-eyed Ji So-yeon, the calm-faced Seo Subin, and the slightly older Jeon Woojin, repeating his first year. Under a torrential downpour, a figure lay defeated on the rain-slicked ground, observed by a hooded individual. Another, with a chillingly triumphant smirk, held a glowing chain, his breath misting in the cold air, his words a taunting revelation of his opponent's earlier bravado. Under a downpour, a white-haired figure, panting, questioned his opponent's true rank, suspecting it to be higher than revealed. A heavy silence hung in the rain-soaked air, broken only by the word "otherwise." The defeated, dark-haired man, his face bruised and dripping with rain, muttered in disbelief that an F-ranker like him could have been so thoroughly crushed. Understanding dawned on the white-haired figure, and a steely resolve hardened his gaze, as shimmering, diamond-shaped fragments of energy coalesced around him, crackling with power. He declared his intent to escalate the fight, a dangerous glint in his eyes, caught in the downpour. The blue-haired man looked up with a startled, almost crazed, grin, a glint of metal flashing in his hand. Outrage twisted the dark-haired man's face as he roared, accusing someone of blatant cheating. A hooded figure, wielding a staff and radiating power, was revealed as an SSS rank summoner with impressive stats. To onlookers, a woman in pink pajamas and a man with glasses stared in awe and exclaimed at his incredible luck as he held a small, glowing figure in his hands. He modestly chuckled, attributing his success to mere chance. Intrigued, the blue-haired girl pointed at something off-panel, a curious glint in her eyes. The bespectacled young man beside her, seemingly amused, wondered aloud if she had ever encountered such a board game before. A curious girl with short, dark hair wondered aloud if the scene before her resembled a familiar board game, Blue Marble. Three figures, Yoonbi, Dan, and Miyu, stood on glowing platforms, their stats displayed beside them, suggesting a strategic battle of abilities. A startled onlooker with glasses clarified that it wasn't quite Blue Marble, but rather a game specifically designed for those with special powers. The bespectacled young man explained to the woman beside him that the device analyzed their powers to create corresponding characters. It was then Purim's turn, and she readily agreed. A finger reached out and touched a glowing button, accompanied by an instruction to observe closely. A finger pressed a glowing pink button, activating some unseen process. A system message flashed, confirming a Class B mage character had been successfully created. Bathed in a vibrant magenta light, the newly formed mage, cloaked and holding a gnarled staff, materialized, their stats displayed beside them. The bespectacled young man excitedly explained to the blue-haired girl how to obtain a personalized in-game character, gesturing towards a vibrant, holographic display. He further revealed that such games were specifically designed for individuals with special abilities, even serving as practical training tools. Realization dawned on the girl as she understood why Seung-yeon had brought a particular console. Her surprise evident in her widened eyes and slightly parted lips. One hand offered a small, dark object to another, urging them to give it a shot. With a casual "yeah, okay," the object was accepted and examined with a thoughtful gaze. Seated on the floor with two onlookers, the girl in pink pajamas held a small disc between her fingers. As the group seemed to anticipate something, the blue-haired girl, dressed in a vibrant pink outfit, gestured in confusion, wondering aloud why the vivid colors weren't having the desired effect. The bespectacled man beside her, seemingly just as perplexed, stammered out his shared ignorance. Bewildered, the blonde-haired character expressed astonishment at an unseen event. As the pink-haired woman sat with a placid expression, he speculated that her energy levels might be too low to register. Player 5's abilities proved unanalyzable. A chilling red alert flashing across the screen. Focus shifted to Player 5 themselves, the camera zooming in on a small, nondescript gray disc they held, shimmering with an unsettling energy. The blue-haired woman, radiating an otherworldly aura, presented something shimmering in her outstretched palm, identified as a Ritterny. A wave of shocked what's rippled through the stunned onlookers, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. A hidden class was being assigned at random, sparking envy in one onlooker. Astonishment rippled through the small crowd as they processed the news. A girl with a small crown especially captivated. Suddenly, the focus shifted. A revelation about a Ritterny eclipsing the initial excitement. The blonde-haired man stammered a shocked question, his eyes wide with disbelief. Stunned, the blue-haired woman could only manage a breathless, whispered question in response. Resolute, she vowed to do everything within her power. A scarred man, his dark hair pulled back, advised someone to keep their return a secret, as much as possible, urged to maintain this crucial secrecy. The other person, a young woman with striking blue hair and wide eyes, questioned the reason with a confused why. Returning from another world often brings unforeseen complications. The casually dressed man gestured to the small group with their luggage, highlighting the heavy price one of them had paid. 12 lost years. With a grim expression, the scarred man spoke of those unable to adapt to society, and how many of them ultimately resort to crime. A grim-faced trio in dark suits discussed the ineffectiveness of ability-sealing devices against a certain powerful foe. Raw, untamed power radiated from a figure, their abilities comparable to the infamous S-rank. Tears of blood mixing with an unsettlingly wide smile. The devastating potential of this individual was summarized as a walking natural disaster, a force of nature beyond control. With a grim expression, the scarred man spoke of the returnee's ill repute. His voice lowered, he warned of the dire consequences if anyone discovered his listener's true nature. The blue-haired woman stood nervously before a trio of shadowy figures, sweat beading on her brow as she was warned of impending judgment. Taking a shaky breath, she hesitated, a blush rising on her cheeks as she began to speak. Her wide eye, filled with a mix of fear and determination, hinted at a weighty revelation about to unfold. Urged to tell their story, the blonde-haired individual looked startled, while the dark-haired person beside them, clad in pajamas, seemed expectantly insistent. A subtle shift in the atmosphere hinted at a shared secret. As the dark-haired figure's expression softened, their gaze holding a mix of curiosity and concern. A blue-haired girl leaned in, her eyes alight with curiosity, convinced the blonde youth before her a journey to another world, and eagerly pressed him for details. He, with a subtle smirk, confirmed her suspicions, sparking her excitement and desire to hear his extraordinary tale. Another girl and a bespectacled boy, overhearing, chimed in with their own captivated eagerness. Just then, a notification appeared announcing the creation of a hidden class character, Dragon Slayer, causing one of the onlookers to gasp in awe at the rare occurrence. A woman, her hand glowing with an otherworldly light, looked distressed as her companion asked if she was all right. She anxiously questioned if her friend wasn't bothered by her being a Ritterny. The other girl, nonchalantly munching on a snack, casually dismissed the concern. She simply didn't mind things like that. The girl in pink pajamas offered a bright, reassuring smile. A soft, almost whispered sound escaped her lips as she sat on the floor, her head bowed. The other person, seemingly concerned at her well-being, a girl with dark blue hair, her eyes wide with curiosity, expressed her eagerness to learn more. The pink-haired woman, kneeling gracefully, explained that returnees come back from another world after battling demon kings and facing otherworldly challenges. The bespectacled young man asked a chilling question, his gaze fixed on the woman across from him, who held a miniature, glowing figure aloft. Her expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, as she considered his pointed inquiry about taking a life. A chilling splash of darkness erupted above the purple-haired girl, her features twisting into a mask of pure terror as she gasped, "What?" Rain fell on an empty basketball court, the chain link fence a hazy backdrop in the downpour. A figure stood in the rain, their hand, slick with water, trembling slightly. As shimmering shards rained down, a lone figure in a dark coat retreated, his back to the unknown danger. A cruel whisper, to bad, hung in the air, laced with a chilling finality. The white-haired man, face streaked with rain and perhaps tears, bore the weight of the words, "You were better in terms of technique and strategy." A bittersweet victory for someone else. The cloaked figure loomed over the fallen one, a chilling remark echoing in the rain-slicked alley, despite everything. It was the younger man who now lay defeated. Rain plastered the blue-haired young man's hair to his forehead, his face a mask of grim determination, etched with the strain of recent exertion, yet a voice urged him not to dwell on it too much. A cryptic warning hung in the air, hinting that easily gained power often surpasses harder in strength. The teal-haired figure, drenched in shadow and sweat, stared wide-eyed in apparent shock and dawning realization. He seemed to grapple with the unsettling truth of those words, the weight of their implication pressing upon him. A bespectacled young man seemed troubled by a disheartening thought. Then, a blonde man and a blue-haired woman exchanged a knowing look, seemingly aware of a sudden shift in power. Finally, the woman observed with a hint of cynicism how some effortlessly obtained opportunities that others craved desperately. A cynical voice declared that success wasn't solely about talent, but also about influence, wealth, and connections. The speaker's intense gaze, framed by sharp shadows, hinted at a deep understanding of these harsh truths, adding weight to the claim that willpower alone wouldn't get you far in this world. With a chillingly sweet smile, the pink-haired girl, warned of the cruel world awaiting at school. A cloaked figure, standing tall, warned the kneeling one that the path they sought would only lead to pain. Sweat trickled down the pale face of a young man as he thought about his father. He revealed to another, cloaked figure that his father hadn't achieved the prestigious S rank. The speaker continued, his voice low, revealing that his father hadn't even reached a rank. Despite his rank, the hunter's achievements were whispered with awe, surpassing even seasoned rankers. He had conquered countless A and S-rank dungeons, their dangers mere stepping stones on his path. The weight of innumerable lives saved rested on his weary, determined face, a testament to his unwavering resolve. Driven by fierce determination, the young man with dark, windswept hair declared his triumphs were earned through relentless effort, his voice echoing with the intensity of his struggle. The spiky-haired youth, drenched in sweat, defiantly declared his low rank wouldn't give anyone the right to control his destiny. He challenged the unseen opponent, questioning whether his F rank was justification for expulsion from the competition. A heavy silence hung in the air before a low, chilling okay rumbled from a shadowed figure, a glint of something dangerous. In their eye, the figure's voice, now laced with a chilling undertone, hinted at a dark knowledge of the boy's father's accomplishments. The hooded figure, drenched in somber, was reminded of a devastating S-rank gate that had ravaged Motto 7 years prior. His expression hardened, a mixture of dread and suspicion swirling in his sharp gaze. As he demanded an explanation with a terse why, the dark-haired figure lashed out, demanding to know why a painful memory was being dredged up. The white-haired person somberly recounted the devastating dungeon break, a catastrophe that had claimed countless lives. The grim narrative continued, hinting at further, unspoken horrors beyond the monstrous onslaught. A grim observation hung in the air. Some had even met their end at a hunter's hand. The dark-haired man, face contorted in a furious grimace, roared his disbelief at the ill-timed remark. Amidst a blurry, chaotic backdrop, a woman knelt and embraced a young boy, both seemingly relieved as a voice declared that the past was finally put to rest. A face, contorted in a furious snarl, dripped with sweat and unspoken rage. A man in a suit, his face etched with a grim determination, insisted there was a reason for his actions. Zooming in, a single intense eye, blazing with an unsettling golden light, hinted at something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Under a stormy sky, a man in a dark cloak turned away from the anguished cries of another, who revealed a devastating truth. His sister had died in that very spot. The dark-haired figure was then hit with a gut-wrenching revelation. As the other man screamed that his own father was the murderer, drenched and disoriented, the young man in the hoodie stammered a bewildered what, as if struggling to comprehend. A sudden, unsettling revelation. With a fierce jab of his finger, the white-haired man insisted there was a reason for the drastic action. Another, shrouded in shadow, roared back, questioning if that reason was sacrificing a few to save the many. The shadowed figure's rage intensified, challenging the very principles of the hunters. Amidst a snowy backdrop, a cloaked figure with silver hair pointed accusingly at a younger man, questioning his status as a hunter. The accusation hung heavy in the air, followed by a desperate, Internal cry. Wasn't he supposed to protect everyone? The young man's face, etched with shock and a hint of fear, filled the frame as he grappled with the weight of the situation. Sweat trickled down the white-haired man's face as he addressed Ji Seung-yeon, a question hanging heavy in the tense air. His sharp gaze intensified, demanding an explanation. What was Ji Seung-yeon's true intent? The dark-haired figure, back to the viewer, questioned the silver-haired one's motives with a heavy heart. He pressed further, demanding to know what kind of hunter the other aspired to be, his voice dripping with disapproval. The weight of the accusation hung heavy in the air, leaving the dark-haired figures silently brooding. Two figures stood facing each other in a dimly lit, caged area, the tension palpable between them. A white panel separates the scenes, creating a dramatic pause from behind bars. A shadowed figure watched the confrontation unfold, a sense of foreboding emanating from their silent observation. The pink-haired girl, kneeling, posed a chilling question to the blue-haired one. Have you ever killed someone? A beat of stunned silence hung in the air before the blue-haired girl's gaze flickered towards a bespectacled onlooker, a mixture of surprise and unease in her widened eyes as he whispered, "What the?" Someone stammered, seemingly interrupted mid-sentence. A young woman in a pink pajama top with a cartoon bunny print abruptly announced her urgent need for the restroom, her expression a mixture of panic and desperation. The blue-haired girl in pink pajamas addressed a small group gathered on the floor. A beat passed, and the scene shifted to a close-up of the same girl, a soft blush creeping across her cheeks, a hand resting delicately on her chest, hinting at a shy confession or a moment of vulnerability. A figure in a pink and blue outfit rushed past a startled group, eliciting amused reactions. The bespectacled young man, eyes wide, looked at the pink-haired girl beside him as she laughed heartily, finding her outburst quite entertaining. He questioned Shin Miyu, his tone laced with mild annoyance about her sudden and unexpected remark. The pink-haired girl apologized for something seemingly unsettling, a faint smile playing on her lips. Someone inquired if the subject of their conversation was in magic engineering. The bespectacled youth stammered a correction, revealing she was actually in the hunter department. His companion, surprised and incredulous, really hung in the air. A girl with striking pink hair and a dark outfit, a touch of mischief in her eyes, dismissively declared someone no good. Someone explained that being in the hunter class required more than just hunting, leaving the rest of the sentence hanging in the air, creating a sense of anticipation as to other figures listened intently. The blue-haired figure stood amidst shimmering fragments, the word murder hanging heavy in the air. An unseen voice clarified, suggesting that taking lives was sometimes unavoidable. The pink-haired woman, nibbling a thin cracker with a cryptic smile, confirmed that this grim reality had been understood from the start. A skeptical voice questioned the girl in pink pajamas' ability to thrive in this new environment, her seemingly naive demeanor observed from above. Downstairs, another girl, also in pink pajamas with a similar hairstyle, but a noticeably more distressed expression, gasped for air, her hand outstretched as if seeking support. Sweat beaded on her brow as a chilling thought crossed her mind. Why had she run? She realized with a sinking heart that there was a simple explanation, a truth she could have voiced. Clutching her chest, the blue-haired girl confessed her innocence. The words barely a whisper in the desolate room, haunted by a vivid memory. A girl with flowing blue hair and tears streaming down her face seemed to unleash a powerful, sparkling energy. A close-up on another character's eye, partially obscured by purple hair, revealed their heart was racing with a mixture of fear and awe, overwhelmed by the intense emotions. The purple-haired individual felt a growing sense of displacement and unease in the current situation. Finally, a young girl in red knelt amidst a chaotic, blood-red scene, seemingly trapped and terrified as shadowy figures loomed around her. Sion. A spectral figure with a mischievous grin shimmered in a swirling aura of blue. A young woman in pink pajamas nervously wondered aloud if she would be able to make new friends. Suddenly startled, she turned, a look of apprehension gripping her face. A girl in a blue sweatshirt, adorned with a large orange slice, recognized someone and greeted them with a cheerful wave and a bright hi. Remembering she hadn't shared her name before, the girl in blue introduced herself as Mo Dan, a touch of playful formality in her tone. Faced with Mo Dan's sunny disposition, the other girl, with long dark hair and a pink jacket, shyly stammered her own name, Ji So-yeon. A concerned voice asked a visibly shaken girl if she was all right and still able to continue playing. Intrigued by the possibility of witnessing a hidden class for the first time, the other girl eagerly expressed her desire to see it. With a look of regret, the first girl apologized, admitting she couldn't fulfill her friend's wish. Clutching their pink pajamas, the character initially felt confident about something they were about to do. Doubt crept in, however, and the pajamas wearer admitted their uncertainty. A worried expression filled the face of a short-haired individual in a blue shirt. As the memory of a specific moment made them visibly afraid, the long-haired girl in a stylish jacket confessed a shocking truth, startling the girl with a shorter bob. A beat of stunned silence hung in the air before the second girl, now in comfy pajamas, questioned the revelation with wide-eyed disbelief. She then revealed her own startling secret, admitting her awakening had come late. Back in high school, a classroom, bathed in an unsettling crimson light, hinted at a chaotic event, where control was lost, unleashing something terrible. Haunted by wide, fearful eyes, the blue-haired girl confessed her friends were caught in the crossfire and gravely wounded. With a determined glint in her eye, the girl in the orange-printed shirt declared her unwavering self-belief, dismissing intimidation as a useless tactic. She then vowed to strive to prevent a past mistake from ever recurring, her expression shifting to one of quiet resolve as another character, with blue hair and a contemplative gaze, listened intently in a darkened room. Under a swirling, star-dusted sky, a dark-haired girl called out, her voice laced with urgency. A pale figure with flowing white hair and striking blue eyes materialized amidst a moonlit forest, their ethereal form seeming to shimmer. A lone figure stood within a glacial ravine, puzzling over the absence of a landmark, a crying rock that was inexplicably gone. Intrigued, she questioned a shimmering, spectral being nearby about the mysterious disappearance of the stone. A dark-haired girl, clad in black, insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, merely spoken to a rock. An ethereal, glowing figure seemed to question her claim, expressing disbelief that she'd conversed with an inanimate object. A cascade of water flowed from a weeping rock face. A luminous, ethereal being confessed to sharing the rock's pain, finally cheered. The bright spirit gestured skyward, explaining its departure to a dark-haired girl who looked on with surprise. Under a swirling, star-strewn sky, a lone figure in a dark dress walked a snowy path, her back to the viewer, towards a distant, floating orb. The perspective shifted, revealing a colossal, rocky sphere partially obscured by swirling clouds against a backdrop of the same mesmerizing night sky. The narrative voice solemnly declared that even rocks, clouds, and people are transient. Radiant, multi-limbed figure glowed with an otherworldly light, as a dark-haired girl looked on with a bittersweet smile. A solemn revelation followed. They all cried the same tears. The shared experience became the foundation of an unlikely friendship between two girls, one in pajamas, the other in a casual shirt, their postures conveying a mix of sadness and understanding. The blue-haired girl, clad in a comfy pajama top, offered a soft, knowing smile as someone confirmed her thoughts. With a determined and cheerful gleam in her eyes, the other girl, her short brown hair framing a bright face, declared they just needed to try harder. She then looked expectantly, seeking agreement with a hopeful right. With a reassuring "all right, I'll explain everything. Let's go back now." One girl gently took the other's hand, seemingly leading her away from a tense situation. Suddenly, a swirling vortex of water erupted, catching them both off guard and splashing around them as they stared in wide-eyed surprise. A dark-haired figure, shrouded in shadows, alluded to a devastating S-rank gate incident from 7 years prior, his tone heavy with foreboding. His words clearly unsettled the blue-haired girl in pajamas, her wide eyes reflecting a growing fear, while beside her, another girl with shorter, lighter hair voiced her alarm, her face a mask of panic. A figure, possibly Seung-yeon, was spotted, his back turned to the observer. A voice passionately defended him, claiming no one held him accountable for past events anymore, emphasizing he had his reasons. Another man, his face contorted in a grimace, seemed to wrestle with the justification offered, sweat dripping from his brow, anguished. The white-haired man revealed a devastating truth to the dark-haired figure, his words echoing the tragedy of his sister's death. The dark-haired figure recoiled as the shocking revelation that his own father was responsible for the death struck him like a physical blow. Overwhelmed by the horrific news, the white-haired man's grief and fury erupted, his face contorted in a mask of pain as he screamed in the downpour. The blue-haired girl's face twisted in confusion, a whispered "what?" escaping her lips. Later, watching the figures conversing through a chain-link fence, she covered her mouth with trembling hands. Her wide eyes filled with dread as she wondered what secrets they shared. The blue-haired girl, her face a mask of shock and disbelief, questioned something about their father 7 years prior. A grim realization dawned on the sweat-drenched, silver-haired man. Subin's older sister had been killed. He was challenged, accused of going too far in his pursuit of becoming a hunter. A lone figure, draped in a dark hoodie, stood hunched in the oppressive darkness. A shadowy face loomed, dripping with sweat, the word "you" hanging heavy in the air. He challenged the hooded figure with a bitter reminder, "You wanted to be a hunter." A savior, didn't you? The cloaked figure listened as the dark-haired young man confessed a startling lack of direction, admitting he'd never considered what kind of hunter he aspired to be. The white-haired man, his gaze steady and intense, held the other's attention. He declared his presence was driven by something pure, a deeply personal admiration. Standing on the deck, the bespectacled young man mused that he likely wasn't the only passenger aboard. With a hidden motive, the blue-haired woman seemed hesitant, nervously touching her face, as if considering the many people within the school. She appeared to be contemplating making friends, seemingly surprised by the concept, scoffing. A man with dark hair dismissed another's ambitions. Deeming their skills insufficient for their chosen path, a curt message appeared, seemingly echoing the sentiment and telling the hopeful aspirant to give up. Undeterred and filled with fierce determination, the bandaged hopeful vehemently declared their unwavering intent to achieve their goal. Despite the harsh criticism, a powerful narration hinted that true dedication can overcome even the most daunting of obstacles. The pale-haired figure, sweat beading on his brow, declared with strained intensity that this was all that mattered. A beat of silence hung heavy in the air before the blue-haired youth echoed the sentiment. A grim determination etched on his face. With a quiet but unwavering voice, he confessed to sharing the same burden as his companion. His face contorted in a grimace of pure rage, sweat beading on his brow as he glared at someone unseen. A choked, furious Yu escaped his lips, the words heavy with barely contained fury. A figure with stark white hair, clad in dark attire, unleashed a flurry of crystalline shards, his face contorted in a furious grimace. Another, his spiky hair contrasting with the first, bellowed in disbelief, questioning how they could possibly be the same. Ji Sung-yeon's face, contorted with a grim determination, loomed large. His name shouted in desperation to women, one with dark hair in evident distress. The other with lighter hair peeking out from behind, reacted with shock and alarm to the sudden outburst. A brilliant, star-shaped artifact pulsed with otherworldly energy, drawing the intense gaze of a dark-haired young man. Someone cried out his name, Ki Sung-hyeon, a voice thick with urgency and emotion. Crystalline stars, sharp and shimmering, erupted around him, a sudden, violent attack catching him off guard. The white-haired man's face contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief, a silent question hanging in the air. The dark-haired man responded with a look of fierce determination. His eyes narrowed in a challenge. Suddenly, a figure was sent sprawling, crashing to the ground in a spray of icy particles. A figure with stark white hair coughed violently, a disturbing sound echoing. A brilliant, star-shaped object pulsed with magical energy, seemingly summoned by someone unseen. Shared shock and disbelief twisted the faces of the two, a silent question hanging heavy in the air. A sudden surge of power erupted, vibrant and electric, filling the space between them. His features contorted in a grimace as he absorbed the brutal force of the impact. A burst of brilliant energy erupted, throwing a dark-haired figure back, with a pained cry. To women, one with vibrant blue hair and the other with darker locks, watched the explosive scene unfold with a mixture of concern and anticipation. A piercing beam of light descended from the heavens, illuminating a lone ship. In the dark, turbulent sea, a young man with dark, windswept blue hair, his face etched with a mixture of awe and fear, watched the spectacle unfold, sweat beading on his brow. A hooded figure was startled by a sudden, bright light. Confusion flickered across their face as they registered the unexpected. With a burst of energy, another figure, clad in futuristic armor, crashed to the ground before them. The white-haired figure watched impassively as his opponent crumpled to the ground. A trail of icy energy, marking the force of the blow. A smirk tugged at his lips as he casually brushed a strand of hair from his face, a hint of satisfaction in his golden eye. Groaning, he clutched his head, the aftereffects of the battle beginning to register. He blinked, his gaze falling upon a glowing, blue triangular device materializing in his hand. Ethereal, glowing shards began to fade, causing one character to gasp in alarm. As the spirits dissipated, a dark-haired man reacted with sudden, swift movement. He delivered a powerful blow, knocking the white-haired man to the ground with a resounding crash. A fierce confrontation unfolded as one man, his face contorted in a battle cry, seemed to overpower another. The pale-haired man's eyes widened. In shock and disbelief, a question forming on his lips. His hand, encased in a strange, glowing device, thrummed with power, revealing the source of his sudden realization. A face contorted in shock and suspicion, eyes wide with the dawning realization of a betrayal. A young man, perplexed, questioned how a mere student could possess such a powerful artifact. He then confessed to pilfering useful items from his father's drawer, revealing the source of his unexpected advantage. The cloaked figure crumpled to the ground with a pained groan, amidst a flurry of icy particles. Below him, A dark-haired individual clad in a hooded jacket looked up, breathing heavily and cursing under their breath in frustration. Despite the evident exhaustion and likely pain, a smirk played on the bruised fighter's lips as he savored a small victory, muttering through gritted teeth about finally landing a hit on his opponent. A fierce grin stretched across the white-haired man's face, a predatory gleam in his eyes. With a furious yell, the silver-haired warrior lunged forward, fist cocked. His opponent, cloaked in darker hues, braced for impact, hand outstretched as if to deflect the blow. Near a rattling metal fence, the blue-haired woman panicked, wondering aloud what to do, while her shorter companion with ash-brown hair recoiled in disgust. Finding the unfolding scene utterly brutal, a woman in pink, her voice filled with concern, spoke about a child who had apparently delivered a heart to someone. Shrouded in shadow, a tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the heavy sound of someone's breath. The blue-haired woman, her eyes wide with alarm, whispered a question filled with dread, wondering what was happening. A dark-haired man, his face marked with a fresh cut, threw a determined punch, his focus unwavering as he declared that even seemingly small goals are pursued with utmost seriousness. The impact of a brutal blow landed squarely on a silver-haired man's jaw, sending a spray of blood into the air, while a voice emphasized the absence of any hierarchy between the two. Fighter's a fierce blow landed, sending the white-haired man reeling back as his attacker declared a chilling kinship. The dark-haired man's hand twitched, the words same echoing in the tense silence, heavy with unspoken meaning. A bloodied and enraged figure roared in defiance, questioning a comparison to someone else. Then, as if submerged, the world blurred around him, his face becoming obscured by swirling liquid or energy. Under the stark glow of a city at night, a young man with spiky hair wore a troubled expression. A scene of utter devastation unfolded before him, bodies strewn amongst the rubble of a destroyed cityscape. His eye, wide with shock and horror, focused on the unimaginable carnage. That fateful day began. A lone figure trudged across a desolate, rubble-strewn landscape, driven by an unknown urgency. They ran tirelessly through the ruins. A distant, glimmering city on the horizon, their only beacon dot. As he ran, his thoughts raced, consumed by the sheer terror of his predicament. Anguish twisted his face as he grappled with the unfairness of it all, questioning why this nightmare had befallen him. Desperation clawed at him, the weight of an unknown causality crushing him under the unbearable burden of this living hell. Beneath, a sky thick with indifferent stars, the earth drank deeply of spilled blood. A lone figure, face contorted in grief or rage, raised a fist towards the cold, glittering expanse, questioning the heavens' apathy. A monstrous figure loomed, its features distorted by anguish as tears streamed down its face. Amidst a desolate, rubble-strewn landscape, a lone figure lay sprawled, seemingly defeated. His face, contorted in grief, was stained with tears as he choked back a desperate question of abandonment. Tears streamed down the heartbroken face. A small, lone figure stood amidst a group of onlookers, seemingly pleading for help in escaping a devastating situation. A curt "why" hung heavy in the air, a chilling response to the desperate plea. A figure observed a group, their bearing suggesting they were hunters. With a touch of desperation, the thought lingered that these hunters, at the very least, should be their saviors. Kneeling on the ground, head bowed low, a solitary figure pleaded silently for rescue. With a determined glint in his eye, the man declared he would take on a difficult task himself. Kneeling before a small, wide-eyed child with messy white hair, he vowed to become a protector for those in need, just like the vulnerable one before him. Kneeling before a small child with pale hair, the older figure vowed to protect everyone. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the thought of being left alone. A dark-haired young man, his face etched with understanding, declared a shared kinship with the unseen recipient of his words. The white-haired figure, shrouded in a dark cloak, declared their difference from the others, their back turned to a group in various attire. A challenging question echoed in the brighter, more populated scene. Why was such potent power being wielded for purely selfish purposes, as implied by the casual group observing from a distance? With a flick of dark hair, the hooded figure offered words of encouragement, yet a quiet voice challenged their optimism with a desperate plea. Gripping his opponent's arm, the blue-haired young man urged the older, gray-haired one to take the fight more seriously. A close-up revealed the blue-haired fighter's bruised and determined face, his expression etched with a mix of exhaustion and resolve. With a dismissive gesture, the first character confessed their ignorance about the hunter's life and the other person's background. Their tone shifted, a hopeful glint appearing in their eyes as they suggested learning together. The other person, their sharp gaze intense, seemed to consider the proposition. With a cryptic air, someone declared their true motive for being at school A white-haired man and a small child holding hands stood apart from a hooded figure, the scene hinting at a silent tension. Under the stark lights of a futuristic structure, an older man bowed deeply before a younger, more imposing figure. Blank panel emphasized the weight of the moment. Then, close up, the older man, scars etched onto his weathered face, cast a worried glance at his blue-haired companion, who appeared tense and apprehensive. A smoking gun, held in a firm grip, hinted at recent action. The dark-haired young man, sweat beading on his brow, mirrored the pose of a shadowy figure, gun pointed upwards. His white-haired companion, head bowed, seemed to grapple with a tense situation. The bruised and weary blue-haired young man, his breath catching in his throat, stared wide-eyed and demanded to know the identity of the shadowy, almost glitching figure before him. Two figures, backs against each other, stood poised for battle, their stark white attire contrasting against the dark backdrop. Moments later, a fierce clash erupted, one combatant launching a powerful strike, his green cloak billowing around. Panic filled the air as the blue-haired woman gestured wildly, her companion gasping at the intensity of the unfolding situation, overwhelmed by the scene before them. The shorter-haired girl breathed a stun. The bespectacled figure, appearing from the right side of the frame, inquired about the commotion, his tone laced with concern and confusion. A startled young man with glasses reacted to his sudden noise. To onlookers, a girl with blue hair and another with light brown hair watched the fight unfold before them with bewildered expressions. They confessed their ignorance of the fight's cause, noting it erupted as soon as they arrived on the scene. The bespectacled young man yelled in exasperation, trying to stop the escalating quarrel between two girls, one with vibrant blue hair and the other with a softer, brownish hue. He questioned their presence on the boat, his tone laced with both confusion and concern. A sudden realization dawned on him, his expression twisting with alarm as he worried they were unheard. He feared the consequences of their reckless actions, convinced someone would inevitably get hurt. A woman with blue hair gasped in horror, her face contorted in fear as a menacing red glow pulsed behind her. Urgency filled the air as she declared their current plan a failure, and insisted they stop an unknown threat. As she raced forward, her companion shouted a desperate no in protest. The blue-haired woman, a spark of excitement in her eyes, proposed a plan, while the bespectacled man beside her questioned its feasibility with a worried frown. He vehemently warned against interfering in a fight between ability users, comparing it to recklessly jumping into a gunfight. The gravity of his words seemed to strike the blue-haired girl, her eyes widening with dawning comprehension as she envisioned a similar, equally dangerous scenario. Her confusion and concern were palpable. The blue-haired woman seemed to be presented with a dubious gun confiscation plan involving three figures brandishing firearms. Confused, she suggested simply taking the guns away. The bespectacled man responded with an emphatic and frantic refusal. Trapped behind a metal grate, the bespectacled young man worried about the precarious situation, his eye widened in sudden fear as he realized the potential consequences of the earlier water blast. With a burst of urgent action, he reached into his messenger bag. The bespectacled young man, his expression grim, ordered the worried girl in pink to stay put. Alarmed, she questioned his intentions as he moved away. A ghostly blue handgun materialized in a hand, the crimson backdrop hinting at imminent violence. With a grimace of reluctant resolve, the bespectacled young man brandished a glowing blue pistol, muttering about his lack of options. A beat of stunned silence followed, filled only with a row of question marks hanging in the air. Suddenly, the blue-haired girl gasped, her eyes wide with shock as multiple figures, each armed with similar glowing weapons, materialized around her. Gasps filled the air as a white-haired figure slumped against a chain-link fence, watched by a blue-haired individual. The white-haired man's face was suddenly contorted in pain as he collapsed. The blue-haired man's eyes widened in alarm, his breath catching in his throat as he took in the scene. With a relieved sigh, the bespectacled young man raised his futuristic blue pistol, catching the attention of the wounded figure below. A chillingly calm voice broke the silence, implying that this confrontation had been a long time coming. Startled, the battered and bruised figure looked up in shocked disbelief, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. A bespectacled young man, holding a strange, glowing device, demanded to know what the others were doing. He was furious that they hadn't answered his call, only to find them locked in a supernatural duel. The white-haired combatant and his dark-haired opponent were suddenly interrupted by a chilling realization. The device wasn't what they thought. It was a gun. Panic flared as the bespectacled youth brandished a toy gun, his voice trembling with the awful what-ifs about a ship's fate. The white-haired figure beside him, face etched with worry, echoed the fear, agonizing over the possibility of other children caught in the crossfire. his gaze, sharp and filled with dread, locked with another, dark-haired boy, both their faces mirroring the same chilling apprehension, brandishing a futuristic pistol. The bespectacled young man let out a frustrated groan, exasperated by the constant presence of troublemakers. Overwhelmed and shocked, he gaped, recognizing the notorious Sumpurium amidst the chaos. Despite their claims of research, a student with glasses holding a glowing blue gun was caught red-handed with two others by someone off-panel. The bespectacled student was reminded of the strict no magic tools policy on campus. A stern figure with a scar across their face appeared, their unsettling smile promising discipline for the trio of rule-breakers. Sweat beaded on the blue-haired young man's brow as a chilling premonition of doom washed over him. A majestic cruise ship, gleaming white against the vibrant blue of the sea and sky, dominated the harbor, hinting at a journey about to be disrupted, defeated. The blonde-haired individual lamented their loss, reflecting on the irony of the situation. The same person marveled at their unexpected triumph over a rival through such an unlikely means. Amidst a crowd of students with luggage, perhaps new arrivals, the victor expressed a sarcastic desire to drop out, overwhelmed by the surprising honor of this particular victory. Overwhelmed with guilt, the white-haired youth apologized to the bespectacled one for his current predicament. Brushing off the apology, the bespectacled youth admitted to his own use of magic, accepting responsibility for the situation. He further explained that the magical item was brought in at a professor's request, which might lessen the consequences. Overhearing this, the blue-haired individual expressed disbelief at the professor's involvement, questioning their sanity. The bespectacled person addressed the two others, implying they were the real problem, and whatever decision they made would be troublesome. The person in the red shirt sighed, dismissing the matter, and instructed the blue-haired individuals to head to their assigned dorms. Startled, the blue-haired girl questioned if the bespectacled person wasn't going to the dorms as well. The blonde-haired individual casually mentioned their dorms were likely different. The blue-haired girl reacted with surprise. Another character revealed that Seongan had numerous dorms scattered across the island. A map dotted with markers hinted at assigned locations, possibly dorms. A young woman with blue hair yawned dramatically. The blue-haired girl, now with a look of apprehension, worried aloud to her seemingly unconcerned blonde companion about sharing a dorm with a certain undesirable individual. The young man with teal hair checked their dorm assignment on his phone. As his blue-haired companion gestured dramatically, he read the name aloud, a note of curiosity in his voice. Suddenly, his rolling suitcase hit an obstacle and tipped over with a thud. He looked down at the fallen luggage, with a mildly surprised expression, the girl beside him watching with a similar air of mild concern. Amidst a backdrop of luggage, the blue-haired young man scrolled through his phone, seemingly oblivious to the girl with long, dark blue hair struggling with a suitcase as the white-haired youth casually observed. A hand, presumably the white-haired young man's, gripped a phone, the focus narrowing in on the device as if anticipating a crucial message or call. Suddenly, the white-haired young man's face, marked by a small bandage, contorted with shock and disbelief, his eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and alarm. The blue-haired young man appeared lost in thought, his gaze distant. He hesitantly called out, a note of uncertainty in his voice. Exasperation etched itself onto his features as he questioned the absurdity of the situation. A scarred young man with white hair questioned newcomers, seemingly confirming their dorm assignment. A cheerful woman, leaning against a flashy red car, greeted them warmly, introducing herself as An Oh-yeon, the dorm supervisor. A group of students, luggage in tow, arrived and were greeted by someone leaning against a red car. Observing the new arrivals, the greeter noted their youthful charm, which sparked a playful exchange of compliments with one of the girls. The complimented girl, however, inwardly expressed relief that she wouldn't be sharing a dorm with the overly enthusiastic greeter. The girl with the orange shirt, beaming brightly, exclaimed to the blue-haired girl that they shared a dorm and suggested they become friends. Slightly taken aback, the blue-haired girl stammered out a hesitant agreement with a cheerful and energetic tone. The blue-haired girl offered a ride to the dorm, instructing everyone to put their luggage in the trunk. Beaming, she happily realized she'd already made a friend. The girl beside her mirroring her excitement, the blue-haired girl's joy intensified, convinced the semester was off to an amazing start, as she celebrated with her new friend, flanked by the other students. A century ago, in a world ravaged by monsters and corrupt power wielders, a lone figure, distinguished by his wide-brimmed hat, walked through a village steeped in an unsettlingly pink glow. As a portentous thought suddenly struck him, a cloaked figure, adorned with prayer beads, solemnly declared the need for a sanctuary of learning for those with extraordinary gifts. Years passed. The shadow of Japanese occupation loomed large. But in secrecy, the man established a haven on a secluded island. A school built on hope and hidden from the world. The prestigious Seongan Ability School, later infamous as the Hunter School, loomed large. Its unique admissions policy disregarded background, prioritizing only the presence of special abilities, making it a haven for Korea's uniquely gifted individuals. A remote southern island, seemingly insignificant, housed a school that appeared ordinary at first glance. One might easily dismiss it as just another countryside school, lost in the vastness of its isolated location. However, a remarkable secret lay hidden. The entire island, as large as Gangwon Island itself, served as the school's sprawling campus. High quality training tools and diverse training grounds hinted at a prestigious institution. A vast and rich information network suggested access to powerful knowledge. An infrastructure rivaling a major city implied immense resources and influence. Reaching hands grasped towards a brilliant light, a symbol of hope and power, the very essence of what fueled the dreams of every aspiring hunter, seeking entrance to this hallowed hall of learning. But then, a blue-haired girl, seemingly oblivious to the grand reputation of the academy, before her, stepped onto its grounds, freshly arrived at school. The blue-haired girl, radiating confidence, declared her newfound independence. Suddenly, a voice called out Nana, startling her and widening her bright eyes with surprise. A young man with vibrant blue hair, dressed in a crisp white jacket and dark trousers, adjusted his sleeve, seemingly oblivious to the worried face peering from behind a nearby door. The girl with shoulder-length brown hair urged him to hurry, warning him about being late for the important entrance ceremony. It was the beginning of a new chapter, his first year, first semester. With a mischievous grin, the blue-haired girl, perched on a stool by her vanity, announced her imminent arrival, her reflection mirroring her excitement. The story begins. On entrance ceremony day, Poppy Hall dormitory stood grand against the bright sky. A blue-haired student arrived, phone in hand, met by a voice that seemed to sigh in relief at his belated presence. Noticing someone's absence, the blue-haired individual wondered aloud where the third member of their group was. The girl with the same vibrant blue hair clarified that the missing person, Subin, was apparently preparing for the entrance ceremony. Slightly perplexed, the first speaker questioned what preparations could possibly be necessary for such an event. A girl with short brown hair and wide eyes reacted with surprised understanding to the news of someone's absence. It was revealed that Subin, the freshman representative, was taking the stage. With a solemn expression, the white-haired young man began his pledge, holding a small book in his hands, before a crowd of students and faculty. The silver-haired student representative, Subin, solemnly pledged obedience to the school rules, a promise immediately undercut by his own cynical inner thoughts. The blue-haired student, freshly disciplined, held court before a crowd, his posture radiating an almost arrogant confidence. Discipline Guy 2's expression darkened as he considered the freshman representative's words, a hint of challenge in his narrowed eyes. He mused about the irony of the freshman rep's position, given his prior disciplinary issues. With a knowing gesture, the silver-haired individual indicated someone, revealing that person was the top-admitted student, recalling a powerful water cannon witnessed on a ship. A sense of awe washed over the observer. The sheer power of the water cannon's output was almost comparable to an A-class weapon. Haunted by a near-death experience, the blue-haired young man pondered the thin line between life and death aboard the ship. He questioned his own preparedness, wondering about the sealed ball he'd kept ready. The thought of his opponent's restraint, the irrationality that ultimately saved him, sent chills down his spine. The chilling realization hit him. He could have been the one lying lifeless on the deck. Seol Subin, the freshman representative, stood amidst a cheering crowd, a hint of apprehension beneath his composed exterior. Remembering his father's insistence on joining the student council, a steely resolve hardened his gaze as he faced the daunting task of navigating this new social landscape. The blue-haired youth braced himself, a silent vow to not only survive but also thrive amongst his peers. A stern figure dampened the blue-haired girl's excitement, warning her against premature celebration. She remembered the upcoming classes after the entrance ceremony, her eyes widening slightly. With renewed enthusiasm, she wondered what fascinating things awaited her at the Hunter School. So-hyun, a girl in a purple tracksuit, was abruptly told she needed to return to the dormitory. Confused, she questioned the instruction with a simple, "Stun what?" The other girl, also in a purple tracksuit, implied So-hyun should have known, reminding her of the schedule. He pointedly remarked to the blue-haired girl that she had arrived at their school without completing elementary education, which explained her different schedule. With a gleeful so, the dark-haired girl, clapping her hands together, reveal the mischievous plan. While everyone else attended morning classes, she and So Hyam would secretly study for the equivalency exam together. A girl with vibrant blue hair, her face etched with confusion and a hint of panic, stammered a question about an equivalency exam to her companion. The other girl, her brown hair falling around her face as she thought, hummed thoughtfully, searching for the right words to explain, with a mischievous glint in her eyes and a delighted grin. The young woman clasped her hands together, eagerly, listing off school subjects: Korean, math, English, social studies, science, Korean history, and more, as if plotting some grand scheme. The blue-haired girl, face contorted in a grimace, clung to the car door, loudly proclaiming her displeasure. Entrusting his boisterous sister to the driver, the young man outside offered a reassuring farewell. From the back seat, another girl, equally animated, waved goodbye, dispelling any lingering worries. Amidst the bustle of a school hallway, the blue-haired young man, seemingly exasperated, raised his hand in a gesture of dismissal as someone's scornful "I hate you" hung in the air. He muttered under his breath, a dawning resentment towards his sister beginning to fester. Inside Ginkgo Hall, students diligently worked at their desks, a quiet hum of concentration filling the air. The subject of hunter ethics was announced. Drawing a skeptical look from the blue-haired individual holding a blank paper, he wondered aloud what they could possibly learn from a subject as abstract as ethics. With class about to begin, a student wondered aloud about the professor's absence, only to be reassured by a classmate's calm prediction of perfect timing. The clock ticked closer to the hour, seemingly confirming the prediction. Midnight struck on the grand clock. A door burst open, revealing a figure with dark, windswept hair. The blue-haired individual, seemingly startled by the sudden intrusion, glanced towards the newcomer with a mixture of annoyance and surprise, while another, with shorter black hair, also turned their attention to the door. A one-wheeled vehicle whizzed by, leaving a faint hum in its wake. The short-haired girl, alerted by the sound, turned her head, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. A spiky-haired boy, sweat beading on his forehead, registered the same sound with a startled expression. A sharply dressed figure, coat billowing, stood imposingly on a futuristic hoverboard, radiating an air of cool authority. As the hoverboard zoomed forward, the figure's face tilted upwards, their expression a mixture of grim determination and simmering rage. Bathed in a dramatic red light, a polished she struck the ground with a sharp, resounding click. The dark-haired figure stood before an assembly, back to the viewer, a palpable tension hanging in the air as he offered a polite yet somehow chilling greeting. A sharp-featured man with dark, flowing hair, Hagawara-jin, introduced himself, his voice resonating with an air of authority as he welcomed the class. He paused dramatically, a glint in his eye, hinting at an important announcement. Before a room of expectant students, he leaned forward, about to make a weighty declaration, grimacing. The dark-haired character expressed their utter disdain for the school, their discontent broadened to encompass most educational institutions, their gaze hardening. The blue-haired individual elaborated on the flawed system, criticizing the inefficiency of standardized education in overcrowded classrooms. A blonde student, seemingly resting, was the subject of an observation about ability users and their unique, often stubborn personalities. The focus then shifted to a silver-haired individual, their intense gaze suggesting a silent contemplation of these very principles. The dark-haired figure, a blur of motion, declared their insistence on prioritizing efficient work above all else. An unseen voice affirmed this with a sharp yes, as the figure, now revealed to be wearing dark pants and shoes, moved swiftly, likely on some sort of wheeled device. A new voice chimed in, posing a question related to the ongoing discussion of efficiency. A defeated, cartoonish monster lay smoldering, a testament to the overwhelming power of modern military might. Despite this easy victory, the narrative shifted, revealing that specialized hunters, not soldiers, were tasked with venturing into monster-infested dungeons. Intrigued, a dark-haired individual, their eyes burning with intensity, leaned in, demanding an explanation for this perplexing paradox. In a tense courtroom, a group of individuals sat, their expressions ranging from stoic to apprehensive. A voice echoed, heavy with anticipation, as the answer was about to be revealed. A dark-haired figure emerged from the shadows, a fiery backdrop highlighting his intense gaze, his words hanging in the air, promising a chillingly economical solution. A mountain of spent bullet casings loomed, a stark reminder of the steep price of war. The narrator grimly observed that the cost of military might dwarf the profits gleaned from the magical stones found within the dungeons. A mountain of glittering gems loomed behind a trio of dark-suited figures, their faces obscured, hinting at the sheer wealth at stake. The narrator highlighted the cost-effectiveness of powerful ability users, emphasizing their tremendous physical strength. The origin of the hunter profession was revealed, born from this unique blend of power and economy. Finally, a hand formed the OK gesture, underscoring the ultimate driving force behind it all: money. The silver-haired man, face set in grim understanding, declared that the difference between a hunter and a hero was a matter of cost. A dark-haired woman, radiating an air of seasoned experience, added that true cost went far beyond monetary gain. She continued, her words underscored by a flash image of a desperate struggle against a spectral foe, emphasizing the heavy toll battles take on both body and mind. A seasoned warrior advised on battle strategy, emphasizing minimal effort and optimal movement. He sharply criticized his companion's reckless expenditure of energy. The warrior grimly warned of the foolishness of exhaustion in battle. Judgment was declared paramount. The dark-haired man, with a glint in his crimson eyes, stated that this was the single most essential trait for any hunter. Startled, the student in front jolted upright, eyes wide with surprise as he was abruptly addressed. Intrigued, someone inquired about the blue-haired young man's ability category. He declared himself a construction sorcerer, his statement echoing in the room and met with surprised disbelief. The questioner, taken aback, pondered the unusual nature of this magical specialty. A sharply dressed figure questioned a nervous individual about the limits of their power. The questioned person, sweat dropping, confirmed their ability's range reached about 100 meters. A sudden, complex question about decomposing compounds during physical construction caught the silver-haired young man off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless and slightly flustered. The pale-skinned man with unusual markings bombarded the other with rapid-fire questions about his object manipulation abilities. A hesitant "UH" was all he received in response. The questioner's expression twisted with grim realization. This lack of an answer signified catastrophic failure. With a cryptic air, the long-coated figure glided away on motorized shoes, leaving a chilling reminder about self-knowledge and the art of war echoing in the other man's ears. Troubled, the seated man pondered the unsettling question of how one could strategize without understanding their own strengths and weaknesses. The blue-haired man, seemingly caught off guard and perspiring slightly, grappled with the implications of this strategic riddle. A menacing figure with piercing red eyes singled out a curly-haired boy from the crowd. Startled, the boy questioned if he was indeed the one being addressed. He was then sternly ordered to reveal his category. A dark-haired individual with piercing eyes aggressively demanded an answer from someone, pointing accusingly. Sweat beaded on the brow of the blue-haired young man as he stammered nervously, clearly intimidated. He finally admitted his ignorance, his voice barely a whisper amidst the judging stares of the onlookers in the lecture hall. A sharply dressed figure pointed an accusing finger, the tension in the air palpable. The long-haired individual, with a fierce glint in their eyes, retorted with a venomous glare and a raised hand. The white-haired person's eyes widened in shock, their mouth agape as they recoiled slightly. Startled, the blue-haired young man, Ki Seung-yeon, turned his head at the sound of his name. Someone shouted at him, accusing him of being crazy. Seung-yeon, bewildered, could only manage a confused what as he faced the silver-haired person who'd yelled at him. The white-haired newcomer was clearly agitated, demanding to know why. The blue-haired student seemed clueless about their assigned category. He pressed further, exasperated by the others' defiant attitude on their very first day. A tense silence hung in the air as the blue-haired student, adjusting his tie, began to explain his actions. The blue-haired youth, clearly flustered, confessed his ignorance of some specialized terminology, much to the apparent amusement of the onlookers. He doubled down on his lack of knowledge, emphasizing his initial honest response. The spiky-haired individual reacted with wide-eyed shock, a dawning realization creeping across his face. A sense of foreboding hung in the air as he began a hesitant question, dreading the answer. A dark-haired young man, seemingly perplexed, was asked if he understood anything at all. He appeared lost in thought for a moment before an exasperated voice abruptly dismissed the question. The spiky-haired individual, turning sharply towards another with a surge of impatience, aggressively told them to figure things out themselves. The blue-haired young man adjusted his collar, seemingly nonchalant, yet a subtle tension hung in the air as others observed him. A group watched him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. A sense of foreboding settled as the narrator confessed their past obliviousness to the unfolding situation. The blue-haired student paused in the hallway, a strange premonition washing over him as he scanned the faces of his classmates. A wave of unease gripped him, the weight of his choices pressing down as he wondered about the repercussions of his actions. Impressed by the young student's quick grasp of addition and subtraction, the tutor suggested they wrap up the lesson, only to propose a leap to multiplication, leaving the slightly overwhelmed child speechless. Seung-yeon was greeted by his professor, a startled look on his face as he was interrupted mid-task. Annoyed at the disturbance, the professor snapped at the student, demanding to know what was so urgent. Hesitantly, the student began to address his professor. A nervous tremor in his voice, a seemingly frustrated voice questioned if someone was already falling behind, a discarded headset and keyboard hinting at a struggle. The blue-haired young man admitted his difficulty with a simple yes, his expression troubled. He then confessed to his companion, a man with sharp features and darker hair, that the other students seemed inexplicably ahead, leaving him bewildered. Despite extensive research online and in libraries, the dark-haired man leaned back in his chair, a mixture of frustration and disbelief coloring his features. As he questioned the suggested resources, a stern-faced man in a white shirt and tie inquired cautiously about the blue-haired youth's ability user license. Confused, the young man questioned the very concept of such a license. His hesitant not yet was met with an outburst of disbelief and outrage from the older man, who grabbed him by the shoulders, demanding an explanation. The dark-haired figure stressed the absolute necessity of possessing one, even for ability users outside of the hunter ranks, leaving the blue-haired youth in apparent distress. He stammered a desperate explanation of his failure to obtain it. The dark-haired individual's next statement, revealing a restriction for minors requiring parental consent, stunned the other, who exclaimed in disbelief. A stern-faced man, shrouded in shadows, seemed determined to keep his children from the hunters' life. It was even whispered he'd thwarted their attempts to obtain licenses. Suddenly, a sharp question broke the tension. Didn't his returnee sister possess a license already? Puzzled by an unfamiliar term, the blue-haired woman paused her writing, a question mark etched on her face. Leaning in, the other woman, dressed in a purple jacket, relayed a message, her expression hinting at some amusement about Professor Chai Ji-hyung's words. A man with slick back hair leaned in, seemingly offering something glowing to a blue-haired youth. The slick-haired man reassured the youth that he could still obtain whatever it was when he was older. Suddenly agitated, the youth recoiled in horror, frantically declaring it was too late and predicting impending doom. Confused and concerned, the blue-haired youth quietly questioned the reason for such despair. The blue-haired man was questioned sharply about how he'd been training. Without any apparent knowledge or guidance, he calmly explained that his training had been purely physical, led by Ju-young. He added that Ju-young had mentioned the difficulty of teaching him about a specific ability, hence the omission. A dark-haired man erupted in a furious denial, implying a hidden motive behind Ju-young's silence. The blue-haired youth's face contorted with a mixture of frustration and anger as he spat out an accusation, blaming someone's silence for a current predicament. He repeated the sentiment, now laced with disbelief, the question hanging heavy in the air. Suddenly, the focus shifted to an ancient-looking scroll, adorned with glowing symbols and a crimson feather, hinting at a hidden truth about licensed ability users worldwide being bound by a secret covenant. The dark-haired man leaned in, seemingly revealing a crucial secret about a covenant preventing those with special abilities from sharing information with outsiders. The blue-haired listener reacted with visible surprise to the revealed information. The man then explained that this covenant was an unbreakable chain, forged from the combined energy of all license holders, visualized as a complex, glowing network. He emphasized the sheer impossibility of severing this powerful bond. The young man realized the readily available information was just a sliver of the truth, a deceptive facade. He suspected the information was not just incomplete, but outright fabricated. A troubling question arose. Why was this information so tightly controlled? A shadowed face hinted at a grim truth. These abilities were inherently dangerous. Even the weakest with such power could be lethal to ordinary people. The threat illustrated by a silhouetted figure seemingly defenseless against another with a pointed weapon. Unlike guns, these abilities were impossible to confiscate and invisible to the untrained eye, making them an even greater menace. The dark-haired person explained that easily accessible power would plunge public safety back a century to a more chaotic era. Frustrated, the blue-haired individual clutched their head, suddenly understanding the relentless daily physical training they'd been subjected to. A man in a white shirt and tie, seemingly an official, stared in disbelief, muttering, "This is crazy." He paused, taking in the scene, then breathed a single awestruck word, "Amazing." The reason for his astonishment became clear. A young man with a bandage across his face, radiating electric blue energy, demonstrated an extraordinary power, proving that his recommendation wasn't based solely on a rare ability. Exhausted and slumped in a chair, the The blue-haired man's disheveled appearance betrayed the arduous journey he'd endured, a testament to his honed instincts and resilience in the face of adversity. A dark-haired man in a crisp white shirt, leaning over some papers, mused with a smirk that he truly had an eye for talent. He then offered some reassuring words, explaining that enrollment at Seongan came with equivalent qualifications, even without a license. A blue-haired individual looked up in surprise as a small, glowing blue cube was presented to them. Questioning what it was, a young man with teal hair presented a small, shimmering blue cube, explaining it was a blue cube, a key to his secret network for those with special abilities, containing a wealth of information. Intrigued, the other person thoughtfully murmured, considering the implications of such a device. The man in the light shirt instructed the blue-haired youth to study some websites he'd organized, promising to send a message with more details. Later, the young man agreed with a sigh, but his superior, adding a final warning, stressed the importance of feigning knowledge. The blue-haired young man was reminded of the cutthroat, skill-based elitism that permeated the prestigious halls of his world-class school. He then visibly tensed, sweat beading on his brow as someone suggested with a pointed undertone that he should aim for a student council position beneath a clear sky. A promise of caution hung in the air, directed towards a grand, elegant building. The blue-haired girl, holding a small, intricately designed box, hummed thoughtfully, her expression a mixture of curiosity and contemplation. A curious girl, holding a vibrant, gem-like object, innocently inquired if it could be used for games. The older woman, with a playful smirk, hinted at a different purpose, encouraging the girl to experiment. Intrigued, the girl tentatively pressed the gem, a spark of light erupting as she questioned her action. A hand, seemingly out of nowhere, presented a glowing, translucent box, pulsating with vibrant energy. A digital display flashed, confirming the identity of student Ki So-hyun as the box dimmed, settling into a soft pink hue. A girl with blue hair reacted with amazed excitement as a futuristic device seemingly activated. Above her, another girl, with darker hair, calmly explained the device's ability to answer any question. The blue-haired girl, eyes wide with wonder, hesitantly questioned if the device would truly respond to her inquiries. A mysterious, glowing object prompted the blue-haired girl to speak. Astonished, she realized the object could talk to. Then, facing another girl across the table, the blue-haired girl seemed to contemplate this newfound ability. A thoughtful expression on her face, a hooded figure, his face partially obscured, spoke gravely of an S-glass gate that had wreaked havoc in Mapogu 7 years prior. Two young women, one with vibrant blue hair and a concerned expression, the other with shorter, lighter hair and wide, fearful eyes, reacted with a mixture of apprehension and terror to the grim reminder. With a stark clip to her blue hair and a determined glint in her eye, the girl urgently questioned what had transpired in Mapo District 7 years prior. A sudden, startled expression crossed the other woman's face, a small crown hovering above her head as confusion clouded her features. The response came, swift and sharp, that the key words provided were too vague. With a determined glint in her eyes, the blue-haired girl urgently sought information about a tragic incident that occurred in Mapo District 7 years prior, one that involved the death of her father. The keyword, my father, seemed to trigger a strong reaction as the girl, with long brown hair, playfully dismissed the idea with a bright smile and an enthusiastic clap on the shoulder of her dark-haired companion. She excitedly suggested they explore the school community first, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Intrigued, the brunette suggested checking out what her blue-haired friend's acquaintances usually discussed. Startled, the girl with the vibrant hair questioned the reason, only to be brushed off with a casual anyway. Their attention then shifted to Seongan School's free board, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. A flurry of anonymous messages filled the bustling online forum, covering topics from lunch plans to strange sightings. Two separate anonymous users extended an invitation for a shared lunch. Intrigued by a picture of a white cat near the Spruce building, a young woman with dark blue hair wondered about its name. A flurry of digital messages filled the student forum, ranging from course registration queries to lost ID cards and spring song recommendations. Two girls, one with vibrant blue hair and the other with dark locks, observed the mundane online chatter. Disappointed, the blue-haired girl muttered about the surprising normalcy of it all, while her friend pragmatically reminded her that student forums were always like this. Another message popped up, this one seeking classmates from a Hunter Theory class, hinting at a world beyond ordinary student life. The Jinpa guy was clueless, his ignorance a stark contrast to the burning question of his identity. Someone offered a whispered name, Ki Seung-yun, overheard in the hallway's hushed tones. The blue-haired girl's eyes widened in mild surprise, a soft "huh" escaping her lips. Someone was clearly baffled by another's admittance, questioning their qualifications with disbelief. A beat of stunned silence hung in the air. Then, a close-up on a wide, startled eye, glistening with the nervous sweat, revealed the target of the incredulous whispers. Whispers of disbelief and suspicion filled the air as a blue-haired girl contemplated the shocking news of an unlicensed student passing the written exam. She mused about the school's declining standards, a sentiment echoed by others who suspected foul play. While acknowledging the newcomer's attractiveness, the girl's curiosity shifted towards the upcoming practical test. Online, the buzz around the hunter industry intensified, fueling excitement and anticipation. A young man with blue hair strolled down a tree-lined path, a suspicious glint in his eyes as he pondered the 5 categories of ability users in the odd situation at hand. Suddenly, his thoughts sparked with the urge to investigate, his expression shifting from contemplative to determined, a question of how lingering in his mind. With a sly grin and a confident "I have my ways," the man with the camera strolled down the path, a pink-haired girl trailing slightly behind him. A booming hello echoed as someone approached, startling the pair. The newcomer, dark-haired and serious, inquired if the blue-haired young man was indeed Ki-seung-yeon from the Hunter Department. A slightly hesitant, "Yes, that's me," confirmed his identity. Spotting their target, the eager news club members scrambled for their cameras, excitement buzzing in the air. A hush ready preceded a startled gasp as the camera caught something unexpected. The blue-haired reporter's face contorted in shock as he stammered, trying to make sense of the bizarre sight unfolding before him. He announced their affiliation with Seongan Ability School's newspaper club, promising to report on all intriguing matters with utmost speed. With a slightly strained expression, the blue-haired man offered a ring, asking the other person to wear it for a moment. Confusion radiated from the recipient as they looked at the offered ring, clearly bewildered. A hand, now adorned with the dark band, came into focus. A figure, marked by a dark wristband, reacted with apparent awe there, hands raised as if in surprise. Impressed beyond expectation by a single, powerful line, the observer marveled at its unexpected impact. Then, a man with a camera offered something small to a blue-haired young man, who stammered in astonishment, clearly bewildered by the presented item. With a triumphant laugh, the man in the light shirt brandished a small device, mocking the apparent ignorance of the person behind him, whose surprised face was partly obscured by bubblegum. He declared the device to be a high-ranking measuring tool, emphasizing its importance. The blue-haired young man's expression shifted to shock as he was bluntly labeled F-rank, the lowest possible rating. His wide eyes and stunned silence spoke volumes of his disbelief. Astonishment rippled through the air as news broke of an F-rank student's acceptance into the prestigious Hunter Department. A jubilant man, likely a club advisor, excitedly proposed publishing the shocking development in the newspaper to revive their flagging club, eliciting quiet agreement from the pink-haired photographer beside him. The blue-haired student, seemingly the subject of this surprising news, reacted with bewildered alarm at the mention of newspaper publicity. A reporter, microphone in hand, was interrupted mid-question by the cool composure of the blue-haired individual. The interview, seemingly hijacked, was abruptly steered forward by the newcomer's insistent command. With a demanding tone, the blue-haired figure pressed the reporter, questioning their methods of entry. A man with short dark hair aggressively questioned another about rumors of bribery. He continued, insinuating that the subject was either a chaebol son or a famous hunter's. The blue-haired young man, looking intense and annoyed, was about to retort, seemingly fed up with the accusations. The blue-haired man demanded the pink-haired woman lower her camera, his tone laced with a thinly veiled threat, feigning fear. She complied, her voice trembling slightly as she addressed him by name. Suddenly, a shout erupted, filled with outrage and disbelief at her actions. Another man, face contorted with anger, challenged her journalistic integrity. The blue-haired man, his expression hardening, threatened physical violence unless she entered a ring. With a burst of manic laughter, the man challenged the red-haired girl, her bubblegum momentarily forgotten, to defeat him if she wanted the interview to end. His grin widened, radiating smug confidence as he taunted her, claiming victory was impossible for a low-ranking parachute student like her. A man with dark hair erupted in maniacal laughter, his face contorted with glee. Panicked, the blue-haired man wrestled with another on the floor, desperately promising a ring and vowing not to publish something. A small figure wearing a cap watched the chaotic scene unfold, seemingly startled by the commotion. A worried young man with messy teal hair grimaced, realizing his fears had materialized with the unwelcome arrival of some rivals. He winced, clutching his face in apparent pain, questioning his chances of joining the student council. Looking towards a grand school building in the distance, the pain intensified, further fueling his doubts. A determined-looking girl from the medical department and an enthusiastic man from the welfare department were introduced. Their lack of combat experience subtly hinted at.